Chapter 677. The three of them walked down the long tunnel. Ding Ming and Liang Yi walked side by side, but Isendale hid far away. She was still a little afraid of Liang Yi. "Are you a human or a ghost?" Isendale asked this question along the way. Liang Yi was a little annoyed by her questions. "I'm a new life form formed by the fusion of a psionicist, a spirit Qingshan, and a spore life form. How many times do I have to say it? Not a human?" Isendale obviously did not understand. Liang Yi said, "Yes, but also not human." Isendale was confused and could only follow Ding Ming obediently. "Where's this place?" Ding Ming asked. Liang Yi sighed. "I only know that this is the fertile chalk star system. I don't know where we are exactly. When I was teleported, the droplet woke up halfway. The escape pod was rescued by a fleet of the Empire, but on the way back, we were surrounded by the frogs. In a hurry, the Empire fleet also used a large teleportation portal to retreat, but I didn't get better. After I woke up, I was teleported to this place." Ding Ming also sighed. "Miss Liang, I'm sorry for the journey." Liang Yi nodded. "I hope everyone is fine." Ding Ming said, "Xanjie is fine. We've already met up." Liang Yi said, "Why don't I see little rascal, Xiao AI?" Ding Ming said, "It's a long story. You'll know in the future. What's the situation like here?" Liang Yi said, "I can't explain it clearly in a short time. Mr. Ting, come with me." After that, she activated her origin energy and ran forward. Ding Ming and Isendale followed closely behind her. The tunnel was indeed quite long, but as they went deeper, Ding Ming and Isendale both felt powerful energy fluctuations. These fluctuations obviously came from divine light technology. Liang Yi gradually slowed down as the fluctuations became stronger and more obvious. The end of the tunnel was a dead end, but there was a real divine light singularity flashing in the air. Ding Ming stared at the dead end blocked by the steel wall and said quietly, "This is not a dead end." Liang Yi and Isendale nodded at the same time. They could both feel a powerful energy pulsing outside the steel wall, but the wall blocked these fluctuations very well. Liang Yi explained, "I've been unconscious here for more than 30 days. The droplet absorbed the energy here. Not only did it repair my spirit, but it also helped me break through to Warlord." Ding Ming stared at the flickering singularity. "But this singularity is not complete." Liang Yi said, "Yes, sometimes it will appear and sometimes it will disappear. The connection I established with it is also intermittent." Ding Ming extended his left hand again, allowing the divine light gauntlet to approach the oddity. Instantly, the oddity sensed it and it began glowing. In the blink of an eye, the divine light gauntlet had transformed into a spinning cross-shaped star. Liang Yi said, "Just as I expected. It will only react like this when a unit with divine light technology is nearby." Ding Ming nodded. He already had this feeling when he was at the workstation. The singularity seemed to be looking for something. It was definitely not looking for the soldiers, but someone or something related to divine light technology. Suddenly, Shitzi Brightstar said respectfully, "This is Princess Ariel's aura." Liang Yi and Isendale were shocked, especially Isendale. She had never seen anything like this before. She was so shocked that she almost attacked. But Ding Ming answered in time. "Yes, I was once Princess Ariel's host." The singularity said, "I see. No wonder you felt the aura of my race." Ding Ming muttered, "Did you summon me?" The singularity said, "Yes. Because of the aura of my race, I opened the teleportation array for you and let you in." This explained why the ghost eyes could be transmitted into the cavern ahead, because he was at the B3 workstation. Ding Ming asked, "What's going on here?" The singularity said, "This is a large strategic fortress built by the enemy to invade our race's energy storage. The situation is very serious." Ding Ming asked curiously, "A strategic fortress?" The singularity explained, "Many years ago, there were enemies who invaded this place. According to our records, there were all kinds of enemies. But more than 20 years ago, the most threatening enemy built this strategic fortress. It could avoid the deterrence of our race's energy and was slowly encroaching on the energy storage. However, this enemy suddenly disappeared more than a decade ago. In recent years, new enemies have appeared. They are also of all kinds and come from different regions. Based on what we know, the two biggest threats are the Starbow group from the Holy Grail Federation and the Sevenfold Mountain family from the Devouring World. Ding Ming was secretly shocked when he heard this. Lan Bing's judgment back then was not wrong. The Starbow group knew about Xinguang biotechnology. Are the Starbow group's workstations outside, looking for the energy storage? Ding Ming asked. The Singularity said, that's right. They've already found the perimeter and are trying to use the basic teleportation array to enter. The cavern you just arrived at is the entrance to this strategic fortress, but we've already modified it. Normal enemies can't enter. Besides, the Devouring World and humans often kill each other. If you don't have the aura of my race on you, you'll be trapped there and die. Ding Ming nodded and said, I understand. That place is not a protected area, but a testing area. Correct. The Singularity answered. You passed the test, so we made an exception and let you in. This is the connection center. If you go any further, you'll enter the area of the energy storage. Ding Ming said in a low voice, What can I do? The Singularity said, As a warrior of our race, you naturally have to take on the responsibility of guarding the energy storage. You have to repel all enemies and ensure that the energy is used by our race. Ding Ming took a deep breath and said, Understood. The Singularity said, The current situation is not optimistic. Normal enemies have been isolated outside, but we can't do anything about the powerful enemies. As for the reason, you should know. Ding Ming, of course, understood. The Singularity was to the Mao Xing civilization like an AI program was to the mastermind system. They had been programmed to not have any combat ability. In order to truly protect the divine light energy storage, they had to rely on humans to fight. The Singularity continued. This mutant spore life form is not strong enough to enter, and this human female cannot enter either. Ding Ming asked why. The Singularity said, She doesn't have the aura of our race on her. She can only stay in the connection center or be eliminated. If she chooses to be eliminated, you will do it. Isendale was not an ordinary person. She clearly understood what was going on and hurriedly said, I'm Ding Ming's wife in the Holy Grail Federation. I'll help him fight. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. You're really good at taking advantage of the situation. The Singularity said, I detected that you don't have his aura on you. You're not husband and wife. You're lying. Isendale hurriedly waved her hand. I'm not lying. We're engaged. It's just that we haven't had a wedding yet. We're usually boyfriend and girlfriend. The Singularity said, unable to determine. Denied entry. Isendale was anxious. It had not been easy to get close to the core area. It was depressing to be rejected at this time. It was a classic example of being chased out without even seeing a treasure mountain. Liang, he also snorted. She's lying. Mr. Ting's wife is Lu Qing. I'm a witness. The Singularity did not answer, but the cross-shaped light kept spinning. It looked like it was waiting for Ding Ming to make a choice. Ding Ming frowned and said, Let them both in. It's fine. The Singularity said, Are you sure? Ding Ming thought that since Liang Yi was one of them, there would not be any problems. Although Isendale was an outsider, as long as he and Liang Yi were around, she would not be able to cause any trouble. Since the Singularity was a strong enemy, there must be other masters in the Starbow group. One more person would be an additional strength. Ding Ming would not underestimate anyone who could find their way to this place. Even if they were not battle saints, they must have extraordinary abilities. Ding Ming nodded and said, No problem. Let's go in together. The Singularity did not say anything else. The cross-shaped light quickly turned into ghost eyes, and a new round of teleportation portals opened. This round of teleportation was different from the previous ones. It seemed to take a long time. In Ding Ming's mind, it took at least a minute. He had reason to believe that this level of teleportation would be to an extremely confidential and important place. By the time his vision returned to normal, even he could not see the environment clearly this time. The overwhelming energy waves came at him head-on. It felt like he had been hit by the rail cannons on a starship. The sharp and fierce beams hit his whole body. Ding Ming realized that the first 9 origin points had been activated spontaneously. They were spinning crazily. Everything in front of her was white and dazzling light. He had experienced this feeling before. When Little Rascal used the red origin crystal to take shape, it was the same situation. He knew that this was related to his telekinesis, vision, and perception. Without saying a word, he immediately closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged. He shut off his telekinesis, vision, and origin energy perception. At the same time, he conducted the divine light essence from the smelting space to forcibly suppress the origins. This greatly reduced the discomfort in his body. At the very least, the suffocating feeling disappeared. After about 5 minutes, Ding Ming felt that he had returned to normal. At this time, he opened his eyes and found Liang, Yi, and Isendale lying on the ground next to him. It seemed that they had fainted. When he turned his head to look at his surroundings, he suddenly opened his mouth wide in shock. There had never been a geographical environment more shocking than this. Strictly speaking, this was not a geographical environment, and he could not describe it. If there was an abyss in this world, then this place was undoubtedly one. In the center of the abyss stood a purple-red super crystal. How big was this crystal? Ding Ming felt that his entire body was not even 1/10,000th of its size. Below the abyss was a bottomless darkness, and above the crystal was not the sky, but a void with countless changing colors. This place was like a missile silo, and it was also like the inside of a red origin crystal. This place was more like one of those unknown astronomical wonders in the depths of the universe. But what was this place? Ding Ming could not explain it all. This was the most mysterious place he had been to since he met the divine light singularity. Chapter 678. After observing for a while, Ding Ming discovered that this place was different from the others. Although the giant crystal stood in the abyss, he was standing on a cliff. Looking down, he could see countless cliffs and steep rocks. Many places had various fortifications extending from the inside of the cliff, the most typical being the steel bridge. Only a small portion of these bridges had been built. Just as the Singularity had said, the enemy had begun building strategic fortresses many years ago. These bridges were clearly meant to connect to the crystal. However, the 2 largest bridges only extended halfway. Even so, the distance between the 2 bridges was at least 3,000 meters. The diameter of this abyss was at least 20 kilometers. It was enough to show the scale of this super crystal. Was this the so-called Divine Light Warehouse? After observing the super crystal with his naked eye for a while, Ding Ming suddenly understood what the oddity had said. First of all, he was 100% sure that there was true essence red crystal inside this crystal. This was because he had seen the power of true essence red crystal and could recognize its aura. However, the supercrystal was not true essence red crystal. If there really was such a large amount of true essence red crystal exposed outside, its energy fluctuations would not only be enough to shatter his body, but would also probably cause a great upheaval in the entire fertile chalk star system. Even the Federation's main star system would attract the attention of the great gods in the universe. From this, it could be seen that this supercrystal was definitely some kind of device that blocked energy fluctuations. It was definitely a product of Mao Xing technology. This was the problem. If you used origin energy perception or telekinesis vision to investigate it, you would not be able to withstand its enormous aura fluctuations. In other words, once a person arrived here, they would have to shut down all kinds of detection methods. At the very least, they could not use any detection methods or martial skills. Otherwise, they would experience the same kind of dizziness that they had experienced earlier. Ding Ming had relied on her deep foundation, strong strength, and the fact that she had the smelting space to recover by a fluke. However, if he did not use origin energy, then he would be just like an ordinary person here. Mechanical equipment would come in handy here. However, could an ordinary person come here? How could an origin energy user not use origin energy or activate their perception when they entered this place? This was a very paradoxical place. Ding Meng could already imagine that many years ago, when the masters came here, they immediately fell into a state of dizziness. Some of them might not wake up for the rest of their lives, and some of them might slip and fall. Below them might be a scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of bones. The more Ding Meng thought about it, the more he felt the wonders of Xinguang technology. Who would be able to find the energy storage in such a place? So what if he found it? After thinking for a while, Ding Meng injected a small amount of origin energy into Liang, Yi, and Eisendale, who were on the ground, and quickly woke them up. Don't use origin energy. Don't check the crystal in the center. After his explanation, Liang Yi slowly opened her eyes. As expected, she was stunned by this place. Instead, it was the water droplet that spoke. I know what this thing is. Ding Meng said in surprise, you know? The water droplet said, yes. When I was still in your consciousness, little rascal shared a small part of the information with me. This crystal is a protective device used by the Maoxing civilization to store precious materials. It is made from very precious materials in the universe. If translated into human language, it should be called the Pearl Dreamland. Eisenale also woke up. She was also very surprised because everything in front of her was a strange sight that she had never seen before. Ding Meng said, the name is quite nice. The water droplet's voice turned cold. The name is nice, but its power is not something you can imagine. Ding Meng said, what's so powerful about it? The water droplet said, go to the broken bridge over there. You'll know when you get there. Following the direction of Liang Yi's finger, Ding Meng noticed that in this circular abyss, the two largest bridges were at 4:30 and 10:30. He himself was at 6 o'clock. The bridge at 4:30 was on the precipice. Visually, it was about 7 or 8 kilometers away. There were no paths on the precipice at all. He could only climb over those protruding rocks. This kind of thing was much more dangerous because he couldn't use his origin ability, nor could he equip his armor. Even the slightest bit of energy fluctuation would trigger the energy backlash from the supercrystal. Ding Meng frowned. These rocks are too far away. The two closest protruding rocks are about 50 meters away. How do I get there? The water droplet said, that will depend on your ability, but I believe that this should not be difficult for you. After that, Liang Yi suddenly turned into a black water stain. The water stain stuck to the cliff and slid down the cliff. Ding Meng was immediately amused. You're just a spore life form, yet you're still able to play like this? Does that count as cheating? Eisendale flicked her hair and snorted. What's the big deal? You think that only she can get there? I could do it too. After saying that, she directly leaped into the air and fell into the depths of the abyss like a great rock spreading its wings. Ding Meng was startled. What the hell are you doing? Eisendale was definitely not trying to commit suicide. Halfway through her flight, her whole body swayed lightly like a swing. She slid along the cliff in a parabola and then swung far away. She did not really fall. Without the telekinesis vision, Ding Meng would have been fooled if it were not for his sharp eyes. It turned out that Eisendale's black satchel had 2 long gray metal lines. They were probably something like a suspension cable. After swinging for a few dozen rounds, she successfully landed on the bridge. It could be seen that this girl usually took risks. There must be a lot of good stuff in the satchel at her waist, which could come in handy at a critical moment. Damn, you're also a talent. Ding Meng suddenly felt a little sad. In the past, he thought that those things were useless, but they turned out to be good equipment in this place. How troublesome. Ding Meng took off her belt and used a little psychic power. The catoptric deflection turned into 2 curved sickles with a kacha-kacha sound. Ding Meng tried to insert the sickles into the cliff and shook them hard. After making sure that the cliff was solid enough, he stabbed left and right into the cliff. He slowly moved in circles on the cliff. This method was a little primitive, but there was no other way. When he moved to the top of the bridge, Ding Meng released some of the force and slid down to the bridgehead. This process took a total of 1 hour. Eisendale was already impatient. You are really slow. Don't you usually bring equipment when you go out? Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. He transformed his catoptric deflection back and pinned it to his waist. Isendale was a little jealous. She glanced at his belt and said, "This knife is not bad." This bridgehead was actually a flat piece of land paved with steel. The flat land was submerged into the mountain wall behind it. It looked like it was extending out from the inside, but the mountain wall had been sealed. It was definitely sealed by a strange point. Isendale took out another set of tools, a pair of low-light glasses and a shiny steel needle. Ding Ming also glanced at the bat-like glasses and said lightly, "Your glasses are not bad." Isendale poked the steel plate on the ground with the needle. Then the glasses emitted ripples of light. It was obvious that she was testing the material composition of the bridge. A super alloy of $512. There are as many as 28 kinds of materials. There are a few nanomaterials and even rare platinum metals that have been refined twice. I'm afraid that even a railgun can't blow up this bridge. Ding Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of rich man built this bridge? A super alloy of $512? Even starships didn't use such expensive materials. It was fine if it was just an alloy, but there were also rare platinum metals. Were they building a bridge or a starship? Liang Yi thought for a moment and said, "The builder probably knew how powerful the supercrystal was and was worried that the bridge would break halfway through, so he used these materials." In fact, the Sacred War Giant Ring was built based on this principle, mainly to consider emergencies. Ding Ming waved his hand and said, "Let's go up and take a look." The three of them walked onto the bridge together. It was really big. It was as wide as a helipad with a width of 70 meters. When they first stepped onto the bridge, they didn't feel anything wrong. However, after walking for more than 100 meters, Ding Ming suddenly felt a slight heat flow in front of him. It was not a heat source energy that was too hot, but it was the heat flow that made him feel sleepy, which he hadn't felt in a long time. It was not because he was tired, but because he felt like he was under the bright autumn sun. He suddenly felt lazy and wanted to enjoy the beautiful and comfortable sunshine, so he especially wanted to sleep. What was going on? Ding Ming looked up into the distance. The purple supercrystal seemed a little blurry, and the warm flow was emitted by the crystal. After walking for a while, there was no change in the heat flow, but he felt even more sleepy. This couldn't go on. Ding Ming secretly operated the first origin. It was a very ordinary operation. He even controlled the force and deliberately made the origin rotate slowly. It was fine if he didn't operate it. As soon as he did, he felt the energy fluctuations of the true source red crystal in the incoming heat flow. The other origins in his body became restless and showed signs of spontaneously rotating again. Ding Ming immediately retreated, and the energy fluctuations in the air immediately disappeared. He calmed himself down and continued moving forward, but the same thing happened again. What the hell was going on? Moving forward meant activating the true source red crystal, and retreating meant falling asleep. He kind of understood the meaning of the bridge. If he didn't repair it, there was a possibility of walking across. He turned around and saw that Liang Yi and Eisenale behind him were also in a trance. It seemed that they were in the same situation. Chapter 679. 10 minutes later, the three of them returned to the bridge. As soon as they came back, they immediately returned to normal. Their minds were quite clear. The water droplets said, "Now do you know how powerful it is?" Ding Ming smiled bitterly. "This is the first time I've encountered such a strange thing." Isendale frowned. "I'm a battle saint, but I can't even walk 100 meters on this bridge." "Damn it," the water droplets said. "This has nothing to do with your origin energy level. On the contrary, the more powerful you are, the more powerful the backlash will be. I've seen some information in Little Rascal's database. In light cases, you'll fall into a deep sleep. In serious cases, your origin energy will become chaotic and you may never wake up." Isendale was unconvinced. "Is your so-called divine light technology really that powerful?" "I'm not sure if it's powerful or not." Ding Ming stared at the bridge thoughtfully. "The person who built this bridge is the powerful one." With this reminder, Isendale suddenly understood. She felt dizzy after walking for less than 100 meters, but this broken bridge had been repaired for more than 3,000 meters. Could it be that the person who repaired the bridge was unbelievably powerful? Could he withstand such a powerful backlash and walk a few kilometers? Isendale pondered and said, "Is it possible that intelligent mechanical equipment drove the bridge over to repair it?" The water droplet said, "This is only possible in theory, but in reality, it's impossible. Let's not talk about other things. Just the installation of the 512 yuan super alloy is impossible for ordinary robots. If it's a large mechanical unit, it must be supported by a high-strength crystal source. But with that kind of energy burst, what do you think the result will be?" Isendale thought for a moment and said, "What if it's an ordinary maintenance worker?" The water droplet said, "Theoretically, an ordinary person can walk a certain distance. Let's say they also walk to the edge of the broken bridge. What will the ordinary person use to water the metal? A pair of hands?" Isendale also sighed. "No matter how many times you say it, you're not allowed to use any form of energy?" The water droplet said, "Something like that." Ding Meng said, "If you think like this, you'll never be able to think of a solution. This bridge must have been built by someone." Isendale snorted. "Nonsense." Ding Meng said, "Since that person was able to go there, he definitely didn't use the usual method. There must be some special method involved." As he said this, Ding Meng had already walked to the edge of the bridge. He stuck his head out and looked down. "Look at the broken bridges below. Why did they stop halfway through?" Liang, he also walked forward to take a look. Didn't the singularity mention it before? Back then, the enemy disappeared halfway through the invasion, so these fortifications were stopped. Ding Meng shook his head and said, "No, these bridges have a pattern." "Really? Let me take a look." Hearing this, Isendale's interest was piqued, and she walked to the bridge to take a closer look. A moment later, she finally understood. It turns out that these broken bridges look disorderly, but they're actually divided into levels. Liang, he also reacted. The two bridges at the very top were the highest level of these bridges. Then, below them were the 4 smaller bridges, and below them were the 6 bridges, and so on, increasing in increments of 8, 10, and 12. The scale of the bridges at each level was shrinking, and the vertical distance between the levels was also shortening. The length of the broken bridges extended out was also shortening. Why is that? Isendale's knowledge of mathematics was really weak. Ding Meng closed his eyes. He could already imagine the first person to break into the bottom of the abyss more than 20 years ago. He was definitely a strong person, but he only knew the power of this pearl dream after paying a huge price. Then, he summoned a large number of origin ability users. First, he built the bridges at the bottom level. The bridges at the bottom were definitely not directly connected to the super crystal. From the beginning, only a small part of the bridges could be built. Then he built the second level, and then they went up in order. Liang was puzzled. "Why is that?" Ding Meng explained, "It's very simple. The strength of the people on each level is limited, and they can only walk so far on the bridge. Then, they use their bare hands to pull the steel cables and transport the alloy materials up. The strength of the origin ability users on the bridge also increases in order. Finally, they use this method of stacking blocks to raise the height to our position. This level is also the closest to the center of the crystal." Liang, he was speechless. "Oh my God, how much did they have to pay to do this?" Isendale's expression was serious. This isn't something that can be done by 1 or 2 experts. Only those big families, sects, and corporations have the manpower, financial resources, and material resources to do this. She did not finish her sentence, but everyone understood what she meant. To pay such a high price, one could imagine how precious the things inside the supercrystal were. Not only was the Starbow Corporation eyeing it, but even the monsters of the Devourer's world had crossed mountains and rivers to come here. Liang, he said, "But why did they stop when they were halfway through? Did they die in an accident? Or was there some other reason?" No one could answer this question. Ding Meng had always been a pragmatic person. "No matter what, we should at least walk to the broken bridge to understand part of the reason." Isendale agreed with this point. She was a high-level battle saint with many abilities, but she could not walk more than 100 meters on the bridge. This was simply infuriating. Ding-Ming thought for a moment, took a few deep breaths, and walked slowly toward the bridge again. This time, he carefully calculated the distance. 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters. When he walked to 100 meters, the warm current appeared as expected. He seemed to have fallen into a comfortable, happy, and intoxicated state. He no longer hesitated and decisively operated the first origin to dispel this negative state. As soon as he did so, traces of energy from the essential source red crystal immediately swept over. Ding-Ming did not panic and immediately guided the divine light essence of the smelting space to suppress the other origins. His whole body returned to normal, and he could walk forward again. This time, he directly moved a large distance, but when he reached a position of 300 meters, the divine light essence origin could no longer suppress him. The second origin had already begun to slowly self-destruct. If he used a larger amount of divine light essence origin, he was afraid that he would attract an even greater backlash from the true source red crystal, and he was afraid that he would lose control. Whatever, he would take a gamble. Ding-Ming made up his mind and immediately opened up the smelting space. A large amount of pure origin energy directly poured into the second origin. The moment he activated the origin energy, his brain went blank. His eyes lit up with white light, and he immediately felt as if he was about to faint. Ding-Ming did not dare to play with fire and quickly withdrew the divine light essence. In his consciousness, the pressure in front of him was like an iron wall crashing into him. He even subconsciously raised his hand to block it. It would have been fine if Ding-Ming hadn't blocked the attack, but the moment she did, she was sent flying. She even felt dizzy for a moment. Ding-Ming felt as if her back had collided with a soft sponge, which acted as a cushion for her. Since he had hit something, it meant that he did not fall off the bridge. His arbitrary judgment had almost cost him his life. However, when he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Isendale's cold face. When he looked down, he was amused. He found himself lying in her arms. Isendale's body was very big. Hugging him was like hugging a child. Ding-Ming realized that when he was sent flying, he had knocked Isendale down. The so-called cushion was actually her chest. It was so big and elastic. It even smelled good with a bang. Isendale kicked Ding-Ming away. Ding-Ming did not fight back. He rolled a few times on the bridge before standing up shakily. His head was still a little dizzy. Isendale blushed and scolded. "If you dare to touch me again, I will kick you to death." Ahem. Ding-Ming was a little embarrassed. "I'm sorry. The energy in front is very strong. I can't block it. Damn it. Do you know you interrupted me?" Isendale glared at him angrily. Then she slowly lay down. However, she did not lie on the ground. Instead, her whole body floated in the air. What's going on? Ding-Ming looked carefully and found that Isendale's exquisite black satchel had moved to her waist. It seemed to be supporting her body. There were also a few data cables sticking out of the satchel and embedded in her temples. She seemed to be sleeping, but her body was slowly moving forward. Ding-Ming quickly understood. Wasn't she using the principle of the induction cabin to cultivate? The data cable was connected to her temples and stimulated her brain through a microcurrent, increasing her perception. The satchel supported her body and increased her stability. This was a F*King simplified version of the sensor cabin. This satchel was really awesome, but why was this guy cultivating for no reason at this time? To absorb the energy of the true source red crystal? Everyone here was an expert. None of them were fools. Ding-Ming seemed to have thought of something. She turned her head and looked behind her. She saw Liang Yi sitting cross-legged on the ground with her eyes closed. However, the water droplet had already left her body and transformed into a spherical shield that enveloped her. Although it was called a shield, it was more like a translucent protective film. The film was constantly flashing with white light. It was also sizzling. It was obviously absorbing energy. After Liang emerged with the water droplet, The efficiency of the water droplet's energy absorption was obviously much faster than her body. No wonder she broke through to the warlord level in such a short time. I get it. Dingming finally reacted. He had already guessed why these two women were cultivating. The heat flow would cause people to feel sleepy, so they would circulate their origin energy to dispel the negative effects. Circulating origin energy would stimulate the true source red crystal, so they would use a cultivation technique or secret technique to suppress the origin. Dingming wasn't sure how they did it, but his method was to extract energy from the smelting space. If I also cultivate and absorb the energy of the true source red crystal, I can control the energy extracted from the smelting space to an appropriate amount. Not only will I not stimulate the second origin, but I can also continuously replenish it. Thus, a balance between the three energies is formed. This way, I can continue to move forward. So that's the principle. Dingming had an idea. He stood up decisively and encouraged himself. Again. Chapter 680. After reaching the 300-meter mark, Dingming closed his eyes and slowly extended his left hand, revealing the divine light bracer. There was a deeper reason for doing this. His cultivation relied on his telekinesis vision to guide the surrounding energy, but he didn't dare open his telekinesis vision right now. Meanwhile, the divine light bracer could automatically absorb the energy from the true origin red crystal and guide it into the smelting space in his heart. Sure enough, the second origin's autobiography was suppressed. Dingming was overjoyed and continued forward. Unfortunately, good things didn't last forever. When he reached the 600-meter mark, he discovered an even bigger problem. Even though the second origin was being suppressed, the first origin was spinning faster and faster, causing the origin energy and blood in his body to flow at an unprecedented rate. Even when he had received the divine light bracer's protection on Rainforest Planet, the origin hadn't been this exaggerated. I can't go any further. Dingming quickly came to this conclusion. His body was extremely hot, and his left wrist was shockingly hot. One had to know that his body had been tempered by hundreds of thousands of degrees of origin energy on Planet Extreme Flame. Even if he didn't circulate any origin energy, he could still withstand the high temperature. But now he was actually having trouble withstanding it. This was simply unbelievable. I've underestimated this bridge, Dingming thought as he sat down. His mind raced as he tried to come up with a solution. If Little Rascal was by his side, what would she suggest? If he let go of the second origin and used an even more powerful divine light bracer to suppress the third origin, would this method work? Screw it, let's try again. Every time he thought that he was trying something bold, it was actually a stupid move. As soon as the smelting space expanded, the first reaction was that the divine light bracer was completely activated. A white coating appeared on his wrist, and he couldn't handle the energy pouring into his arm. Dingming instinctively stopped absorbing the energy, but the aura coming from the smelting space formed a solid white pupil of energy in front of him. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, and the light pupil shattered into pieces and exploded. Dingming was blown away on the spot. Everything in front of him turned black, and his consciousness went blank for a moment. After an unknown amount of time, when he opened his eyes, he was lucky this time. He was not blown off the bridge, nor did he hit the sponge behind him. Instead, he was blown back 140 meters away from the bridgehead. Although his physical fitness had always been tough enough, and he was an unkillable cockroach, the explosion still left him with lingering fear. He was blown back more than 400 meters. One had to know that his first two origins were operating, and yet he was blown so far away. Should he try it on someone else? Those below the warlord level were probably annihilated. When he looked up again, Eisendale had moved to a position close to 300 meters away, while Liang stopped at 190 meters. Neither of them had been affected by the explosion. However, the distance between the three of them was the most direct and clear-cut reflection of the difference between them. This F King bridge was like a ghost bridge. He and Eisendale were so strong, but they couldn't move an inch on the bridge. Who would believe it? What should he do now? Dingming only felt a headache. If only Little Rascal and Little Love were by his side, they would definitely know how to solve the problem. In fact, ever since he met Little Rascal and became an origin ability user, although his path of cultivation was full of twists and turns, to put it nicely, he had the support of extraterrestrial cultivation methods like the Diamond Star technique. To put it bluntly, he had cheats. Why? It was because he had Little Rascal and Little Love, these two cheats. Now that they were gone, he was like an ordinary origin ability user. When he encountered a problem, he had to study it himself, think of a solution, and try again and again. This was also why many origin ability experts were already 100 or 200 years old, or even several hundred years old when they reached the warlord or warlord level. This was because their path of cultivation was mostly about solving problems. These problems were all new and tricky, unlike warlords and warlords, who had the experience of their seniors to guide them. It was obvious that Dingming wasn't very good in this aspect, but his strength was his strong endurance and his willingness to persevere. Therefore, he was stubborn to the end. The reason why he was blown away wasn't because the energy of the true essence red crystal was too strong. It was because the pressure formed by the aura had been diluted by the super crystal. It might not even be 1,000th of the true essence red crystal strength. In the end, he was still blown up. The reason was that when he opened the second point, a large amount of energy suddenly rushed in, and his body couldn't withstand it. To put it bluntly, it was because the first 2 points weren't strong enough to contain this energy. What if he continued to strengthen the first 2 points? Would he be able to withstand it? At this moment, if someone knew what he was thinking, they would probably be scared silly. You're already a high-level battle saint, and you're still thinking about tempering the most basic points? Do you still want to give other origin energy users a way out? If he wanted to, he had to dare. If he dared, he had to do it. Dingming once again moved to a position of 600 meters. This time, he quickly sat down cross-legged and endured the uncomfortable feeling of his origin energy blood flowing faster. He carefully circulated a small amount of telekinesis. Fortunately, this small amount of telekinesis didn't trigger an even larger backlash from the true essence red crystal. Since the super crystal wasn't alarmed, the next step was easy. Dingming quickly entered the space of consciousness and focused his vision on the first point of origin in the depths of his heart. It was as if time had been reversed, and he had returned to the grotesque desert of the dead silent star. Enduring the high temperature, he began to reconstruct the point of origin. Of course, he no longer needed to observe the intricate structure of the point of origin. He had long since memorized the shapes, patterns, geometries, cubes, polyhedra, disordered objects, as well as their sizes, lengths, angles, proportions, positions, and so on. What he needed to do was to quickly reconstruct the point of origin stroke by stroke. Back then, he had spent 8 hours to successfully construct the first point of origin. In Little Rascal's eyes, that was an astonishing speed. But now, his speed could be described as the speed of a deity. He was constructing 8 points of origin every second. Every time he constructed a point of origin, he felt the blood flow in his body slowed down slightly. After approximately 50,000 points of origin reconstruction, he still didn't feel any relief. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Dingming simply began to construct the second point of origin. The 2 points were connected by a line of source power. After constructing 2 points at the same time, he constructed at least 100,000 points of origin. The blood flow in his body finally returned to normal. The divine light bracer could now contain the energy pouring in. The nauseating and suffocating feeling also disappeared, and his body became light again. At this time, he was surprised to find that the first 2 points of origin had undergone a change in form. 2 diamond-shaped points of origin were embedded in his heart. Could this be the true form of Diamond Star technique? He had been in a hurry to cultivate, and his telekinesis vision couldn't perceive the outside world. Little did he know that at this moment, on the bridge, Isendale was constantly being blasted away at a distance of 300 meters, and Liang, he was constantly unconscious. However, the 2 women were also stimulated. They got up from where they fell and continued to cultivate. They had already seen that Ding Meng was still moving forward, getting further and further away from them. Clearly, Ding Meng had found the trick. However, they would never have thought that Ding Meng's strength had increased tremendously in such a short period of time, and that he had used an idiot's method. Ding Meng moved forward again. This time, he didn't dare to move too quickly. God knew when the true source red crystal would give him a new round of energy backlash, so every step he took was carefully taken. Sure enough, after walking for 1,000 meters, something happened. Now, the energy backlash didn't increase, but the scenery around him was twisting and turning into demonic ripples. Even if he closed his eyes, he could see these ripples, which were like telekinesis strings. Suddenly, Ding Meng felt a stabbing pain in his brain, as if thousands of red-hot steel nails had pierced his brain. The pain was indescribable. He was in so much pain that he sat on the ground. During the pain, the ripples changed, and the scenery around him changed again. Ding Meng opened his eyes in surprise. He found that he was at the foot of the celestial heaven's gate of the flourishing kingdom. By the vast river, a couple was snuggling up to each other, enjoying the beautiful spring scenery. Ding Meng cried out involuntarily, "Mr. Yu." The man by the river immediately turned around when he heard the voice. The man was dignified and elegant. He was Yu Xingyang, and the woman holding his arm was slim and graceful. She was Long Yao. As soon as he saw Ding Meng, Yu Xingyang revealed a gentle smile. "Little friend Ding Meng, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you here for 17 years. Ding Meng was stunned. Yu Xingyang smiled and said, "This is not an illusion. The Holy Spirit sent you back. Because you're the chosen one, we've all been waiting for you." Ding Meng couldn't believe that this scene was real, but Yu Xingyang's voice and smile really left a deep impression on him. Ding Meng asked tentatively, "Mr. Yu, didn't you die together with Bai Ping Hai and the others?" Yu Xingyang laughed and said, "I also thought I was dead. Who knew that the sect leader would come down from the mountain and use magic to restore me? Yao Yao also died on the battlefield, but she was also saved." Long Yao was still wearing a veil. She slightly lowered her head and nodded at Ding Meng. Ding Meng endured the severe pain and released a small dot of telekinesis. He was shocked to find that all this seemed to be real. He used his perception to check the two people clearly. Yu Xingyang and Long Yao were high-level warlords, and the Ling Xian saber on Long Yao's waist was really a sharp weapon made of unknown material. Yu Xingyang walked over. "Ding Meng, do you feel a little headache?" Ding Meng said in shock, "How did you know?" Yu Xingyang smiled and said, "I've had this experience before. It's the same after I accidentally entered the Holy Spirit. I can relieve you of this pain." After he finished speaking, he reached out to Ding Meng. A gentle aura came from afar, and Ding Meng immediately felt that the stabbing pain was reduced by more than half. He couldn't help but ask, "What's going on?" Yu Xingyang smiled and said, "We received the order of the Holy Spirit to wait here for you to come back. Then we'll go back together." "Go back?" Ding Meng frowned. "Go back where?" Chapter 681. Yu Xingyang said, "Of course we're going back to the border battlefield to meet up with the Songming army." Ding Meng immediately raised his guard. "The two countries are at war. Why are we meeting up with the Songming army?" Yu Xingyang said proudly, "Of course we're going to conquer the world, unify the 5 countries and conquer the world." Ding Meng said in a low voice, "Mr. Yu, I don't remember you to be that kind of person." Yu Xingyang said, "I'm carrying out the will of the Holy Spirit." Ding Meng said coldly, "The holy tree protects the people of the world. It will never start a war and bring disaster. This is not the will of the Holy Spirit." The smile on Yu Xingyang's face disappeared. "So you're not coming with us?" Ding Meng said angrily, "You're definitely not the real Mr. and Mrs. Yu." Yu Xingyang replied coldly, "Since you're not coming with us, there's no need to keep you around." He then turned his head to signal Long Yao. Long Yao immediately pulled out her shiny Ling Xian knife. The moment the knife was drawn, even the surroundings were lit up by its dazzling brilliance. Ding Meng suddenly felt a splitting headache. He could not muster the strength to resist. Swoosh! The curved saber light was already in front of his eyes, and he could even feel the cold aura on his face. Ding Ming collapsed. He felt a piercing pain in his chest. He knew that the knife had pierced through his heart. The pain did not seem to be pain, but a kind of relief. This feeling was like a person who had worked hard for many years suddenly being freed from the shackles and shackles. Ding Ming even had the urge to cover his head and sleep. At this moment, his vision returned to normal. Ripples appeared in front of him again. This was indeed an illusion created by Shun Guang technology. But this illusion was too real. It was even more real than the one on the Rainbow Star. This was because the Yu Xingyang he sensed was the real Yu Xingyang. His figure, appearance, clothing, and even his aura were exactly the same. Ding Ming felt weak all over again. This was not a problem with the origin, but a kind of depression. As for the reason, he could not explain it. He had never felt so tired before. It was a kind of tiredness that came from the bottom of his heart, as if he was tired of everything. He thought of his hometown, a village with beautiful scenery, a long river, lush green lawns, and a golden childhood. Unfortunately, all of this had been ruined by a sudden disaster. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his brain, and the scene around him began to change again. He took a closer look and found that he had returned to the CEO's office of the Shenghao branch in Blue Pole Star City. The Shi crystal glass no longer emitted a blue shimmer, but a pink color. The office was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. "You're finally back." Lan Bing's voice came from beside the desk. This time, Ding Ming knew what was going on. What was this illusion doing? However, no matter how mentally prepared he was, he could not resist the scene in front of him. Lan Bing was wearing a bikini swimsuit with a thin layer of gauze draped over her body. Her snow-white skin and slender figure were in full view of him. "Did you miss me?" Lan Bing hooked her arms around his neck as soon as she came up. Ding Ming did not move. Just like the previous illusion, Lan Bing was the real Lan Bing. Even if she was an illusion, she was no different from a real person. Ding Ming could smell the fresh and natural fragrance on her body. Lan Bing flashed him a charming smile. "Do you feel a headache?" "How do you know?" Ding Ming replied calmly. Lan Bing's breath was almost on his face. "Because only you miss me. That's why you have a headache." Ding Ming said coldly, "What if I'm not?" Lan Bing suddenly pressed her face against his chin. She opened her mouth and gently bit his earlobe. Her voice was very intoxicating. "You must be, because I know that you've been thinking about me. That's the only way you won't have a headache." Ding Ming's whole body was numb. Lan Bing's soft tongue seemed to be licking his neck. No one could resist this kind of stimulation. Another fragrant wind blew over, and Ding Ming found that his mouth was blocked by another pair of soft lips. He lowered his head and saw that this person was actually Dai Yi. Dai Yi's entire body was almost only covered by her underwear, and she was slithering around his chest like a snake. Ding Ming still had a trace of rationality. "Miss Dai." Dai Yi's breath was very rapid. Her voice was also whispering in his ear. "Honey, you've worked hard. It's good that you're back safely. Let us serve you together and let you experience the happiness of a man." At this moment, Ding Ming's breath also became rapid. To be honest, this kind of situation where two women served one man was the dream of many men. Now that two women were moving around his body with their mouths, Ding Ming was on the verge of collapse. The last trace of rationality seemed to be swallowed by the fire of desire. However, it was also this last trace of rationality that reminded him, no, this is an illusion. But why was this illusion so real? It was so intoxicating. It was like a gentle paradise. He was addicted to it and would never want to wake up. In an instant, Ding Ming suddenly realized something. Wasn't this the same when he was in the Rainbow series? The reason why the illusion was created was because of his inner demons. This time, the inner demons were completely magnified to the limit and exposed the most obscure things in his heart. This kind of illusion would never stop. When one scene passed, the next scene would jump out. It was endless and endless. This was the real reason why he would never wake up. Ding Ming did not care about the danger of the situation. He forced the third origin and kicked the two women away with all his strength. Swoosh! All the illusions disappeared, and the scene in front of his eyes returned to the strange ripples. However, the pain in his brain was still intensifying. Now it was no longer pain, but extreme weakness. His mood was so low that it was freezing. It was as if a voice was telling him, "Give up. Give up on everything. Go back and have a good sleep. Everything will be fine." "Never," Ding Meng roared. It did not matter if this was an illusion or a demon. He had always resisted, persevered, and fought against the unfairness in his life. No matter what kind of oppression he faced, he would never compromise. After forcing himself to stay alert, Ding Meng sat down with his legs crossed again. He knew how to deal with this kind of negative emotion. He entered the primary space of consciousness. The shadow was sitting on the reef, staring at the vast ocean. Ding Meng's mind also seemed to be traveling through time. This was a memory that he rarely touched, but he was trying his best to recall it. Time returned to that winter. The bitter cold did not end. The wind and snow were like this strange illusion, mercilessly eating away at one's willpower. Sometimes hunger and cold were like an invisible poison, causing one's limbs to go numb, vision to blur, and consciousness to go blank. Ding Meng limped alone in the snow-covered countryside. He had not eaten anything for 3 days. When he was thirsty, he would swallow the snow on the ground. However, when the snow fell into his stomach, he felt even colder. A voice seemed to be telling him, "Give up, fall on the ground, and have a good sleep." He knew that he absolutely could not fall at this time. Once he fell, he would never be able to get up again. However, his light footsteps were no longer enough to support him walking. Suddenly, he stepped on something and slipped. His entire body rolled into a deep ditch beside him. However, when he woke up, he found that he was not dead. He seemed to be in a shack. The shack was very simple. It was built with rough stones, and there was some dry straw inside. He was lying on a pile of straw. A man walked in from outside the door. This man was about the same age as him. His clothes were ragged, and his body was dirty. Obviously, he was also a refugee. However, there's always a friendly and gentle smile on his face. "You're awake." Ding Meng didn't get up because he couldn't. He was too weak. The boy brought over a bowl of hot soup. "Drink something." Ding Meng did not hesitate. He did not care whether the soup was hot or light. He raised his head and gulped it down. After drinking the hot soup, his whole body felt slightly better. Ding Meng asked curiously, "Did you save me?" The boy smiled and shook his head. "No, it was Uncle Nyo who picked you up." Ding Meng was even more curious. "Who is Uncle Nyo?" The boy said, "He's right next door, but it's best if you don't disturb him. He has a bad temper." Ding Meng thought for a moment, then asked, "May I know your name?" The boy smiled again. "My name is Zheng Ming." "Thank you, brother Zheng Ming." Ding Meng looked up and said seriously, "You're welcome." Zheng Ming waved his hand. "How did you get so badly injured?" Ding Meng was silent. "I stole a small bag of noodles from a rich family, and I was stabbed twice." Zheng Ming also fell silent. They were all children who struggled to survive. Stealing was a common occurrence. However, to be able to survive after stealing the noodles and being stabbed twice in the stomach was already a miracle. "Take care of yourself." Zheng Ming comforted him. "Since you're here, don't worry. There's starweave grass here." Ding Meng immediately lowered his head. He noticed that Zheng Ming's clothes were tattered, but he was wearing a pair of bee skin gloves. The gloves were stained with blood. "Did you pick the grass with your bare hands?" Ding Meng asked hesitantly. The starweave grass was very difficult to uproot. If one really wanted to pick it with their bare hands, they would have to wrap their hands with tree bark or bee skin. Even so, injuries were inevitable. Zheng Ming smiled. "I rely on my own strength to make a living." "That's not embarrassing, is it?" Ding Meng suddenly pulled out a dark gold claw knife from his shabby pocket. "Take this." Zheng Ming did not refuse. He looked at the knife carefully. "You're already like this, but this knife is still very well preserved." Ding Meng smiled. "This is not an ordinary knife. It's a hero's knife that has been passed down for many generations. The last big brother gave it to me. He said that this knife should be left for those who really need it. I think you need it now. Take it." Zheng Ming carefully put the knife away. "Thank you. Don't worry, I'll use it well." Chapter 682. After getting the hero's knife, Zheng Ming worked hard to gather the starweave grass. Every evening, he would bring a bowl of brown rice and a basin of water to Ding Ming. Relying on this little bit of food and water, Ding Ming rested for half a month before he recovered. Walking out of the shack, he realized that this place was in a narrow and quiet valley. Blue starweave grass was planted all over the mountain. Zheng Ming made a living by gathering the grass every day. Next to the shack was a dilapidated cowshed made of wood. There was no cow in the cowshed, but Uncle Nyo lived there. Because Zheng Ming didn't know what Uncle Nyo's name was, he just called him Uncle Nyo. Uncle Nyo was also an old refugee in ragged clothes. According to Zheng Ming, when he came here, Uncle Nyo was already living here. Uncle Nyo didn't go out all day, only coming out in the evening. He would curl up at the door, facing the vast sky, and gently play a tune with a green bone leaf. The reason he curled up was because Uncle Nyo's left leg had been severed, and he could not stand normally. As for how his leg was severed, Uncle Nyo never talked about it, and Ding Ming never dared to ask because Uncle Nyo had a very strange temper. He never paid any attention to Ding Ming and Zheng Ming. No matter how hard Ding Ming and the others worked, no matter how tired they were, Uncle Nyo would always leave the house punctually at dusk. He only had one thing to do, and that was to ask Zheng Ming for wine. Wine was an extremely luxurious thing for poor people like them at the border. Even the lowest quality wine sold at the market required Zheng Ming to gather 2 hours of starweave grass every day and carry it back to town to exchange for a small bottle. It was because of this small bottle that Zheng Ming was never stingy in exchanging it for Uncle Nyo every day, no matter the weather, and he never complained. Uncle Nyo had a low tolerance for alcohol. Every time he finished drinking, he would slowly play a tune to the sky. The tune was very beautiful, and Ding Ming listened to it many times. Slowly, he learned how to play it as well. He played the song better than Uncle Nyo, but he still did not know the name of the song. Once, while Uncle Nyo was drinking, Ding Ming plucked up his courage and approached him. "Uncle Nyo, you play this song every day. What is the name of this song?" Uncle Nyo was usually a man of few words, but he made an exception this time. "Why are you asking for his name?" Ding Ming said thoughtfully, "I always feel that this song is very sad, but also full of nostalgia, just like returning to my hometown." Uncle Nyo glanced at him and said calmly, "The name of this song is the original scenery of hometown." Ding Ming suddenly understood. "No wonder." Uncle Nyo asked, "Where is your hometown?" Ding Ming scratched his head and said, "At the colorful cloud plating on the southern border." "Oh." Uncle Nyo did not ask any more questions. After he finished drinking, he played a song as usual and then returned to the shed to rest. However, after this time, he no longer played the original scenery of hometown. Instead, he played all kinds of songs, cheerful, heroic, sad, elegant. There were moving and elegant songs of the Desheng Kingdom, and there were also songs of the nomads of the Demon Kingdom outside the realm. Anyway, no matter what he played, Ding Ming always learned it very quickly. "Uncle Nyo, you know so many songs. You must have been to many places, right?" Ding Ming asked again. Uncle Nyo still ignored him. He continued to do things his own way. He went out on time in the evening, curled up his crippled body, and drank slowly. After he finished playing, he climbed back into the shed to rest. This person was really strange, so strange that it was scary. However, Ding Ming was not afraid of him. In fact, Ding Ming even felt that Uncle Nyo was somewhat close to him. Winter slowly passed, and the bright and beautiful spring finally arrived. On an evening with lingering spring rain, Uncle Nyo played the song for a long time after he finished drinking. The song that night was especially sad. There was an indescribable sadness in the song, which made people unable to control themselves for a long time. Ding Ming, who was lying on a pile of straw, listened to the song for most of the night. He suddenly felt that Uncle Nyo must have experienced something very painful in his life, which was why he was willing to stay in this desolate place and pass the time with wine and songs all day long. He could live without eating, but perhaps he was alive because of this small bottle of inferior wine every evening. "What do you live for?" Uncle Neo would occasionally ask this kind of question suddenly. Zheng Mingjing came back with rice and noodles. He always had a positive attitude. Uncle Neo, if we don't work hard, you won't be able to get your next meal. Uncle Neo ignored him. He turned his head and said, Ding Ming, what about you? Ding Ming smiled bitterly. I have to live, and I have to live well. Only then will I be worthy of those people. He thought of the little girl, the protector of the people, Ding Wenhe, and his friends who had frozen to death in the ice and snow. Without these people's generosity and righteousness, Ding Ming would not exist in this world. Uncle Neo picked up the bottle of wine. Would you like to have a sip? Ding Ming shook his head. I can't drink. Uncle Neo snorted coldly. You are a real man. If you can't even drink, how can you live? Zheng Mingjing rushed up, grabbed the bottle of wine, and took a sip. Then, he started coughing violently. Uncle Neo glanced at the two little guys and said no more. He slowly drank the rest of the wine, played a fisherman's song, and climbed back into the shed. Ding Ming looked at Zheng Mingjing's crooked body with sympathy in his eyes. He finally understood why Zheng Mingjing worked so hard every day and insisted on buying a small bottle of wine for Uncle Neo. If you were old and had no family or friends and could only live out the rest of your life alone, what would you think? Would you be able to live on? The days went on, and soon summer arrived. Midsummer was the most suitable season for starweave grass to grow. Zheng Mingjing bought a new batch of seeds from town. Because Ding Ming was helping him, he decided to expand the starweave grass and sell it in town. He would get a batch of food to store for them during the most difficult winter. This patch of starweave grass was the foundation of their livelihood. Zheng Mingjing had always cultivated the grass well. Uncle Neo, you only drink wine every day and don't eat. Are you an origin energy user? Ding Ming finally asked this question. Uncle Neo was surprised. You know about origin energy users? I don't know. Ding Ming shook his head. When I was very young, I heard about origin energy users in the Kayendu village. When he mentioned the Kayendu village, a complicated look flashed across Uncle Neo's eyes. You've never seen an origin energy user before? Ding Ming still shook his head. Our village was too poor. I heard that even the soldiers at the border weren't willing to go there, so we've never seen what an origin energy user looks like. Uncle Neo's expression was somewhat absent-minded. After a long time, he sighed. Being an ordinary person is actually quite good. If you really become an origin energy user, it might not be a good thing. Why? Ding Ming clearly didn't understand. Uncle Neo said, if you really become a warrior in the future, you'll realize that no matter how strong you are, there will always be someone stronger than you. The higher you climb, the harder you'll fall. This time, Ding Ming understood. Uncle Neo had definitely been an origin energy user in the past. This leg of his must have been broken by someone. Ding Ming didn't know whether it was because he was disheartened or because he was running away from his enemies that he had ended up in this place. Uncle Neo continued, but ordinary people won't end up like this. They work hard their whole lives, willing to work hard without complaint. As long as they have something to eat, they'll be satisfied. As he said this, his gaze fell on the haystack in the distance. Zheng Ming was currently binding starweave grass. Although Zheng Ming was working hard, he seemed to be very happy. Uncle Neo sighed. That's why being an ordinary person is quite good. At the very least, you won't do something as stupid as hitting a rock with an egg. Ding Ming asked, why do you say that hitting a rock with an egg is stupid? Only a child like him could ask such a question. Uncle Neo glared at him. Then if you smash an egg against a rock, do you think the rock will break, or do you think the egg will break? Ding Ming pondered for a moment and said, no matter how hard a rock is, it's still dead. Although an egg is weak, it's still alive. A rock can only lie on the ground forever, but an egg can give birth to a chick. The chick will grow up sooner or later, and one day it will be able to fly into the sky and trample the rock beneath its feet. I feel that an egg is still stronger. Uncle Neo looked at him and didn't say anything for a long time. From that day onwards, Uncle Neo suddenly stopped drinking. He would only play a simple tune in the evenings. Zheng Ming was very surprised by this, but Uncle Neo didn't explain anything. He only called Ding Ming over. Watch and see if you can understand. He slowly raised his right hand, forming a knife hand motion. Then he slashed out at an extremely slow speed. Dingming definitely couldn't understand it, but Zhengming seemed to have understood something. He also raised his knife hand and slashed out with his palm. Uncle Nyo nodded, but also shook his head. Then he crawled back. This knife hand motion seemed to have some kind of magic. Zhengming would do it every now and then. Even when he was working, he would use his hand to chop trees. After a long time, even Dingming had learned how to do it. At this time, Dingming finally understood that Uncle Nyo's demonstration was actually a simple yet profound martial technique. This was the carp leaping over the dragon gate, the knife hand motion. Therefore, the two children waited for Uncle Nyo to come out every evening. They took advantage of this short period of time to humbly ask him questions about their cultivation. Only at this time would Uncle Nyo patiently teach them and become talkative. First of all, you need to exert force in your lower body. Then, you need to exert force from your waist. Then, you can stack the force on your elbow. Only in this way can you increase your attack power. Zhengming's movements are very correct. Dingming, you're still not proficient enough. This knife hand motion must be decisive. If the attack is not neutral, then you have to forcefully attack the opponent's shoulder and chest, from top to bottom, all the way to the opponent's feet. After landing, if the opponent still hasn't been defeated by you, then you have to escape. Brother Zhengming, let's practice. Okay, Brother Dingming, you've improved a lot. Seeing Zhengming and Dingming excitedly practicing martial techniques, a complicated look flashed across Uncle Nyo's eyes. He didn't know whether his secret teaching of martial arts was a blessing or a curse for these two children. He only saw the continuation of his life in these two children. He was once so naive and happy, and also worked hard. He didn't want these two children to fall into a situation when they were old. Chapter 683. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Under Uncle Nyo's careful guidance, Dingming and Zhengming grew up very quickly. Furthermore, the starweave grass had been harvested this year, and the two children no longer suffered from the cold and hunger. Coupled with their hard work every day, their bodies gradually became stronger. It was midsummer's night again. Zhengming and Dingming pushed a wooden cart back from the town. This time, it was empty. The food they had stockpiled was enough to last them for a long time. So recently, they had directly exchanged the starweave grass for money. As they were tired from the day's work, the two of them rested under the big tree in front of the shed. Brother Zhengming, what are we going to do with the money? Dingming expressed his confusion. In his mind, food was much more precious than money. Zhengming smiled and said, Dingming, I want to save some money and then leave this place. Dingming was even more confused. Aren't we living a good life? Why do you want to leave? Zhengming's gaze fell into the distance. I want to walk around the outside world and take a look. At the very least, we should go to the capital of the Shang Kingdom and take a look, right? I think Uncle Nyo is right. We are good men, so we shouldn't stay in the mountains forever. We should go out and make a name for ourselves. Dingming said, if we leave, what will happen to Uncle Nyo? Who will take care of him? Zhengming patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry. When this year is over, we will collect all the starweave grass here in winter and have enough money for the journey. When the time comes, we will bring Uncle Nyo with us. Dingming nodded. Yes, my life was saved by Uncle Nyo. We can't leave him behind. Zhengming smiled and said, well said. That's my good brother. Let's go over there and get some well water to relieve the heat. Once the two of them left, the door of the cowshed was slowly pushed open. Uncle Nyo crawled out with his old body curled up. As usual, his face was expressionless, but tonight, the music he was playing was exceptionally melodious and deep. Drunken and wild songs. The sword's light is cold. The cold moon's lonely shadow covers the snowy mountains. When we wake up, it's hard to sever our gratitude and enmity, but after we get drunk, we'll forget each other. The old man in his twilight years had been using music to express his feelings all these years, because he knew that the time of parting was coming, but he could never have imagined how suddenly this other way would come. In the middle of the night, Ding Ming was suddenly awakened by the sound of thunder. There was often heavy rain in the summer at the border. Before the heavy rain, there was always lightning and thunder. But this time, the sound of thunder was very strange. It was as if someone was stepping on a plank above their head. It was very close to them. It would be strange if they could fall asleep. Ding Ming snuck out of the shack. He realized that Uncle Neo had been alerted as well. He crawled out of the shack and looked up at the sky with a serious expression. Kacha, kacha, kacha. A few twisted bolts of lightning streaked across the night sky. Ding Ming and the other two felt their hair stand on end, which meant that the lightning was very close to them. Sure enough, a few seconds later, there was an explosion, and the entire canyon seemed to tremble. Kacha, kacha. Another bolt of lightning tore through the sky. This time, the lightning was actually a twisted and thick purple red. It was like a strange insect tearing at the sky. Ding Ming and the others were all stunned. This was because this was the might of heaven and earth. This was the wrath of heaven that was enough to make any human fear. Boom! A thunderclap fell to the top of the valley, as if something had been blasted into pieces. After a few sparks flashed, Ding Ming and Zheng Ming's complexion changed at the same time. These sparks scattered down, and all of a sudden, the grass was ignited. Starweave grass was very sensitive to fire. Once it caught fire, the fire spread very quickly and was very difficult to put out. Not good. Zheng Ming was already rushing up the slope, dragging the soaked carpet behind him. To those rich and powerful people, Starweave grass was really not worth mentioning. But to Ding Ming and the others, this was the only precious place that could provide them with a livelihood. They could not let the mountain fire burn the grass. Ding Ming was not slow either. He rushed into the grass and raised the carpet, desperately trying to put out the fire. But the fire spread very quickly. When the wind blew, the flames would float 20 to 30 meters away. Zheng Ming could not put out the fire in time. After the two of them put out the fire for a while, the fire grew bigger and bigger. The sudden rise in temperature made it impossible for them to get close. By the time Ding Ming came to his senses, he was shocked to find that the entire canyon was on fire. Moreover, the fire was spreading from the top to the bottom of the two mountain ridges. Ding Ming rushed into the fire and hugged Zheng Ming's waist desperately. "Stop putting out the fire, brother Zheng Ming. Let's go, it's dangerous here." "Oh my God, I worked so hard to plant this grass," Zheng Ming shouted in despair. The two of them returned to the bottom of the mountain and found that the trees and shacks were all on fire. Zheng Ming said, "Let's get out of here. We can't stay here any longer." Ding Ming looked anxiously at the shacks. "Uncle Neo is still there. I'll go." Zheng Ming dashed into the fire, carried Uncle Neo on his shoulder, and ran. Ding Ming was right behind him, using the carpet to put out the fire on the two of them. After a long time, the fire on Zheng Ming's body was put out, but Ding Ming himself was set on fire by the mountain fire. He rolled on the ground and screamed in pain. "Bro, hang in there." Zheng Ming used the carpet to hit Ding Ming. After a while, the two of them were burned beyond recognition. Uncle Neo sighed. "Let's take this opportunity to run. Don't worry about this old man." Zheng Ming gritted his teeth. "No way. I'll carry you on my back." We agreed that we'd leave together. He would never know how much of an impact this sentence had on Ding Ming. It was also from that moment onwards that Ding Ming felt that his life had been greatly influenced by Zheng Ming and Uncle Neo. Zheng Ming carried Uncle Neo on his back and rushed towards the entrance of the valley. However, no matter how fast he ran, he could not outrun the spread of the fire. As soon as they left, the flames engulfed a few shacks like a monster. Ding Ming and Zheng Ming rushed to the entrance of the valley and were both dumbfounded. The mountain road out of the valley was already surrounded by fire. At this moment, the mountain fire no longer looked like a fire. It was like the clouds in the sky, rolling and surging wildly. The entire valley was a sea of fire. There was no way out. They could only stand there and wait for death. Zheng Ming gritted his teeth. He wanted to run for his life, but this mountain fire was not like bandits or soldiers. No matter how determined he was, he could not escape. He could not even get close to it, let alone escape. He felt like he could not even open his eyes if he got even a little closer. "Zhengming, put me down." Uncle Neo suddenly spoke. This time, Uncle Neo did not curl up on the ground. He sat up cross-legged and looked at the dancing flames in front of him. His expression was very calm. "Ding Meng, do you know? My hometown is also covered in colorful clouds." At this time, they did not know why Uncle Neo would suddenly say this. However, Uncle Neo still had to say it. "In my village, I also did not see a single origin ability user, but I am the first one." Ding Meng and Zhengming turned their heads at the same time and looked at him in surprise. At this moment, Uncle Neo did not look dirty or sloppy at all. His back was as straight as a pencil. His eyes were bright and full of expression. His expression was full of confidence. His whole body was emitting a brilliance that had never been seen before. He was like a sword that had been hidden for many years. Normally, the sword was in its scabbard, and the scabbard was ordinary and even somewhat rotten. However, now that the sword was unsheathed, its brilliance shone in all directions. Ding Meng and Zhengming were completely stunned by his aura. I protected that village for 20 years. Unfortunately, I was still defeated and became a cripple. Everyone thought that I was useless, that I had become a piece of trash. I wonder if I'm still useful this time? As he said this, Ding Meng and Zhengming felt a slight chill. The temperature around them seemed to be dropping. When they looked up, they saw that Uncle Neo had pressed a palm against the ground. The ground was beginning to mist. Obviously, the water was being vaporized. However, a thin layer of ice quickly formed on the ground. The ice layer gradually spread into the flames, and the surrounding flames began to dissipate. This was the release of an ice-type origin ability user's origin energy. Ding Meng and Zhengming's eyes lit up. They saw hope in escaping. With a whoosh, the flames that had been dispersed by the ice-type origin energy gathered together once more. The sea of flames was like a flood that once again covered the mountain path. Uncle Neo's expression changed. Ding Meng and Zhengming's faces were also ashen. It seemed that Uncle Neo would not be able to disperse the raging flames. Everyone was destined to die here. As he gazed at the approaching flames, Uncle Neo suddenly laughed loudly. His laughter was very heroic, just like his youthful vigor. However, his laughter was also very sorrowful. After living for so long, I finally understand this principle. It turns out that a person's greatest enemy is their own inner demons. Zhengming, Ding Meng, the two of you are good children. You have served me for so many years. You don't deserve to die here. Uncle Neo will send you on your last journey. Ah! As he roared, his entire body began to burn with white flames. This was the Devil Kingdom's unique technique, the art of returning to the sun. It burned the origin spirit at all costs to stimulate one's potential. Go! Uncle Neo slammed his palm into the ground again. A layer of ice spread through the flames at a speed visible to the naked eye. This time, it was as if a river of ice had broken through the sea of flames and opened up the mountain path. Go! Uncle Neo roared angrily. Ding Meng hesitated. But Uncle Neo had already completely turned into an eye of light, but his voice was still ringing out. Kids, you have to live well to be worthy of me. Remember, no matter how difficult the situation is in the future, never lower your head and compromise. Hurry up and go. I can't hold on for too long. Ding Meng and the other man rushed up the mountain path at top speed and ran out at top speed. Only when they reached a safe zone did Ding Meng and Zhengming turn around. The mountain path that the river of ice had broken through was slowly being consumed by the flames once more. The eye of light also gradually dissipated. Uncle Neo's figure disappeared from this canyon forever. Zhengming knelt on the ground with a thud and kowtowed respectfully toward the mountain path. Ding Meng also knelt down and kowtowed along with Zhengming. This was the first time he had seen an origin energy user, but it was not the first time he had seen such astonishing courage. Uncle Neo, Ding Wenhe, the civil guard, and the little girl all possessed this kind of courage that would never lower their heads. It was also this courage that had always motivated him to advance courageously and never give up. Ding Meng slowly opened his eyes. The strange ripples in front of his eyes disappeared, and the scenery of the bridge reappeared before his eyes. Moreover, it was incomparably clear. His low spirits were completely dispelled. He slowly stood up, and a surge of courage welled up in his heart. No one could defeat me. Chapter 684. The bridge was still the same bridge, but Ding Meng was no longer the same Ding Meng. When Ding Meng stood up, he suddenly realized that the third, fourth, and fifth points of origin in his body had all turned into diamond forms. His expression became thoughtful. It seemed that when he recalled the past and the space of consciousness, he had essentially recast the points of origin. When he first constructed the eighth point of origin, Xiao AI had analyzed that the eighth point of origin was a choice made in accordance with his inner emotions and moral principles, which would then affect the overall direction of the diamond astral spell. And this memory was especially precious to Ding Meng. Not only was Uncle Nyo sacrificing himself to protect them back then, but it was also the time when he lived together with Zheng Ming and Uncle Nyo. It was a rare and beautiful time in his life, because during that period of time, he didn't suffer from hunger or cold, nor was he bullied by others. He didn't have to steal or fight, and he didn't have to flee for his life. These were already the happiest things to him. Even during his most difficult times later on, he was unwilling to touch upon these memories, because Uncle Nyo and Big Brother Zheng Ming were no longer around. However, Uncle Nyo and Zheng Ming's influence on him was simply too great. Zheng Ming was the first elder brother in his life, and Uncle Nyo was the first master who taught him martial arts. When this memory was reconstructed, the points of origin in his body immediately changed. All the stinging pain faded away, and all the heat flow and energy backlash disappeared. Ding Meng could now walk on the bridge with ease. This time, when he walked to the position of 1,800 meters, a new point of divine light finally flashed on the bridge. Soon, it turned into a humanoid figure. In fact, Ding Meng had seen this figure before in the Rainbow Temple. It was the General Miao Xing who sat on the throne. At this moment, the figure spoke. "Hello, warrior. According to the Singularity Guard in front, a warrior of my race entered the warehouse 2 years ago. I was worried that you would not be able to make it. Congratulations on making it here." Ding Meng was surprised. 2 years have passed. The figure said, "Yes. At least you have spent 2 years in this warehouse. Your speed is very fast. Even among the warriors of my race, you are one of the most outstanding." Ding Meng sighed. "What's with these illusions?" The figure said, "These are your inner demons and negative emotions. You have successfully dispelled them. You also truly possess the temperament of a general of my race." Ding Meng said, "I still don't understand. Why are these emotions such a big hindrance to my progress?" The figure explained patiently, "Because low-level races rely on primitive food to grow. Miao Xing, we rely on emotions to evolve." That, Ding Meng was surprised. Emotions? The light figure said, "High-level civilizations live by devouring emotions. When you were cultivating just now, you recalled those difficult lives, but you did not give up. You persevered and moved forward bravely. This is one of the best qualities that my race recognizes. Therefore, you have to evolve." Ding Meng seemed to understand something. "What if I can't hold on?" The figure said, "If you fall into the illusions and are unfortunately trapped by your inner demons, you will follow Yu Xingyang to conquer the world, kill, and indulge in debauchery with your two beauties. You will develop violent, murderous, and lustful emotions. When these emotions reach their limits, you will evolve. However, you will no longer be a member of my race. You will evolve into demons. That is how demons came to be." Ding Meng finally understood. "You're saying that I've evolved? I don't feel like I have changed much." The figure said, "Your strength has increased tremendously. You have evolved into a general of my race." As the silhouette spoke, he spread out his hands. A large mass of light floated out and covered his feet. The light slowly transformed into a pair of ancient battle boots. The material was exactly the same as the Divine Light wristband. Divine Light combat boots? Ding Ming felt a large amount of information flow into his brain. The figure nodded. The symbol of a general of my race is a pair of combat boots that we are proud of. They will be of great help to you. Ding Ming muttered, "What's up with this bridge?" The figure said, "It was built by the enemy 26 years ago." Ding Ming said, "But I've only walked 1,800 meters, but the bridge is 3,000 meters long. Could it be that the enemy is stronger than us?" The figure said, "That's not the case. You will understand the reason later. Now, the warehouse will be handed over to you. Please guard this place." After saying that, the figure faded into a singularity. The singularity quickly disappeared from the bridge. Ding Ming continued forward. He finally came to the edge of the broken bridge at 3,200 meters. Now, he was no longer affected by the Pearl Dream. Because he had become strong enough, the backlash of the energy provided him with an endless supply of training resources. After reopening his telekinesis vision and carefully observing the supercrystal, he finally had an idea. When he looked back, he could not help but be surprised. Isendale was already 600 meters away, while Liang Yi was 300 meters away. However, because 2 years had passed, both of them were covered in dust, and their hair was disheveled. They did not look very good. However, Ding Ming believed that they could not see him, because they could only see the endless energy storm. Returning to the bridge again, Ding Ming easily woke Isendale and Liang Yi up from their respective worlds. Seeing that it was him, Liang Yi was excited. "Mr. Ting, you're back. I thought you had left." Ding Ming waved his hand. "No, I've always been here." "You walked to the broken bridge?" Isendale was doubtful. Ding Ming did not answer her question. "You should go back now." Isendale frowned. "Why?" Ding Ming said, "This place is not for you to stay." Isendale was unwilling to accept it. Isendale was definitely not willing to give up. She had paid such a high price and finally found this place. How could she return empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain? Liang Yi said, "But if we want to go back now, where do we go back?" Ding Ming smiled. "Go back the way you came, of course." Isendale and Liang Yi looked at each other. How did they get in? They did not even know how to get back, let alone go back. Ding Ming smiled and slowly opened his palm. A singularity appeared out of thin air. The air in front of him rippled like water, and a rippled door appeared. This was the transmission array inside the warehouse. Since Guangying's shadow had given him the Divine Light boots, it meant that Guangying's shadow had transferred the jurisdiction of the warehouse to him. He already knew how to control the singularity from the information flow in the boots. It's up to you whether you want to go or not, but I have to remind you that if you don't go, you may not have the chance to. Ding Ming took the lead and walked in. Liang Yi quickly followed. Isendale thought about it carefully and followed him. After a flash of white light, the three of them returned to the passage where Liang Yi had been. At this moment, everyone could guess that the so-called strategic fortress of the Singularity was actually a large military fortification that completely sandwiched the supercrystal in all directions. This main passage should be the largest and closest to the supercrystal. However, halfway through, Ding Ming suddenly stopped and stared at the dark depths of the passage. Liang Yi was a little surprised. He suddenly saw that Isendale's face had also darkened. Isendale took out the armor box again and put on the Queen of Darkness. It seemed that someone had broken into the passage. 3 minutes later, powerful mechanical footsteps could be heard from the depths of the darkness. Liang Yi took a closer look and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the middle of the passage, there were more than 20 sets of blue Origin battle armor. Although these soldiers hadn't activated their Origin energy yet, with more than 20 sets of blue Origin battle armor moving side by side, the majestic momentum was enough to frighten anyone. It must be known that those who could break into the fortress through the workstation were not ordinary war sovereigns or war masters. These people in front of them were undoubtedly strong enemies. Ding Ming's face also darkened. He could no longer sense the existence of divine light energy fluctuations in the passage. It seemed that with the invasion of the enemy, the Singularity guards here had moved into the warehouse. He finally understood why the guards in the passage had said that the warehouse was in danger. It was because the enemy's tentacles were getting closer and closer. Suddenly, all the Blue Chew series armor stopped and stared coldly at Ding Meng and the other two. The leading set of armor in the middle suddenly said in a cold voice, "Miss Isendale, how have you been? When did you walk together with Ding Meng?" Hearing this voice, Ding Meng immediately knew who it was. It was Zhong Huazheng. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. Isendale was not surprised. She calmly asked, "How did you find out?" Zhong Huazheng sneered. "Miss Qianyu's body has been found. You are too bold. How dare you openly kill someone on the Thorn Space Station?" Since Qianyu's body had been found, it meant that the Qianyu who had landed on planet Perry was a fake. Perhaps Yulong was also a fake. If they followed this trail, they would naturally find the culprit. Isendale's voice also became cold. "Where is Xiaolo?" Zhong Huazheng leisurely said, "Since Secretary Qian was unfortunately killed, your little follower will naturally be buried with her. You can't go back, so there is no need for you to go back. Then you can go die." Ruthless was not one to talk nonsense. Isendale directly rushed out with a punch. Zhong Huazheng didn't move at all. He only waved his hand lightly, and the two armors beside him also flew out. Facing the Queen of Darkness' huge alloy fist, the two armors were quite tough. They actually met the fist of the Queen of Darkness with their fist. Boom! A large amount of air burst out in the passage, causing the others to step back. Ding Meng's heart kept sinking. Zhong Huazheng's two subordinates were not at a disadvantage when facing Isendale. Although everyone's origin energy was not fully activated, Ding Meng did not doubt that Zhong Huazheng's subordinates were useless. He suddenly remembered the mixed and powerful origin energy in planet Perry space. Could it be that the elites of the Starbow group had come here? Chapter 685. In the middle of the passage, Isendale and two soldiers were fighting fiercely, but Zhong Huazheng ignored them. He turned to Ding Meng and said, "I'm looking forward to it. We finally meet again, Secretary Ding." He deliberately dragged out the words Secretary Ding. His meaning was self-evident. Ding Meng was the secretary of Shenghao Group. He could let go of the previous few things, but this time, since she had touched this place, she had touched the bottom line of Xinhong Group. This time, no one would be polite to her. Ding Meng smiled. "It seems that you are very confident." Zhong Huazheng laughed. "I cannot be confident. The third miss can't control this place. No one can protect you this time. It's useless to escape." Ding Meng sighed. "That's true. There are so many of you. I believe that there is no one you can't deal with." Zhong Huazheng also sighed. "The third miss admires you so much. You left the Xinhong Group and went to the Shenghao Group. You probably didn't expect this day to come, did you?" Ding Meng asked. "Did you build this military fortress?" Zhong Huazheng smiled. "Did we build it? Is that important?" Ding Meng sighed. "If it was built by the Xinhong Group, it will be fine. If not, it seems that I am not the only unlucky one today." Zhong Huazheng asked, "What do you mean?" Ding Meng said seriously, "What I mean is, if you think that you and your men can easily deal with me just because you're equipped with armor, you're thinking too simply." Zhong Huazheng sneered. "To be honest, we have so many masters gathered here. You will not die unjustly." Ding Meng also smiled. "To be honest, can you kill me?" Zhong Huazheng did not wave his hand this time. Instead, he stepped forward and stood still. His electronic eyes stared at Ding Meng. He did not attack, but Liang Yi, who was behind Ding Meng, turned into a water droplet and slipped into the darkness. Liang Yi was not an expert at their level. He could not even withstand the pressure of Zhong Huazheng's aura. He could only transform into a water droplet to avoid the attack. However, Ding Meng was relieved that she had transformed into her original form. To be honest, even Ding Meng had no idea how to kill Liang Yi in her droplet form. Zhong Huazheng still stood still, but he had already released his illusion-type telekinesis. In his mind, Ding Meng would only last for 30 seconds at most before he knelt down and begged for mercy. The last time they fought in Blue Pole Star City, he had suffered a loss, but that did not mean that his telekinesis was weaker than Ding Meng's. It was just that he had scruples about the situation in the hotel at that time, and he was also afraid of accidentally hurting his own people. But this time, he did not have so many scruples. Moreover, he was equipped with his armor, so he was very confident that he did not attack directly. He was confident that he could make Ding Meng kneel down with his telekinesis and aura. 30 seconds passed quickly. Unfortunately, Ding Meng did not kneel down and beg for mercy, nor did he move an inch. Ding Meng smiled strangely. "Are you wondering why I haven't fallen down yet?" Zhong Huazheng was shocked when he heard this. He suddenly felt an invisible force bouncing back from the front, like a big wall hitting him. It was too late for him to withdraw his psyche power. With a muffled sound, he staggered back a few steps. Zhong Huazheng looked up in surprise. How did this kid's telekinesis become so strong? It was at least twice as strong as when he was in Blue Pole Star City. While he was still in shock, a red light suddenly flashed wildly in his vision. This was the armor warning him of danger. Isendale and the other two who were in close combat had also received the warning. At this moment, the steel plates on the walls of the passage were rippling like water. These metals seemed to have been softened by some strange power. Bright spots kept glowing green. Upon closer inspection, there were strands of green mucus seeping out of the steel plates. Zhong Huazheng exclaimed in the comms channel, "Attention, there are enemies from the Devourer world infiltrating. Everyone, prepare for battle." The Devourer world could be said to be the #1 natural enemy of the Federal Empire. No matter how strong you were, how good your equipment was, or how strong your combat skills were, they were all useless in the face of the Devourer world's strange poisons. Bang! The weapons of more than 20 warframes lit up at the same time. Crystal flame guns, ion pulse guns, plasma collectors, and other weapons of various sizes spewed out crystal flames of various colors, aiming to burn the venom that had seeped in. Even Isendale pulled out a black spear and spewed out purple crystal flames like rain, burning the walls with a sizzling sound. Hee. A creepy voice suddenly sounded in the air above the passage. This voice was neither male nor female. It was neither like an electronic voice nor a mechanical voice. It sounded like withered leaves rubbing together. It was very hoarse and uncomfortable. Lowly and cowardly worms, you know nothing about true power, except the baptism of holy water. Zhong Huazheng's voice changed. Not good. This is the aura of the Devourer world's great elder. Everyone, activate your shields. However, it was too late. These people were still shooting and spitting fire and had not put away their weapons. The venom seeping out of the steel plates suddenly turned black. The black mucus shot out like sharp arrows. In just an instant, thousands of streams of venom shot out and hit Blue Chew's armor. White smoke immediately rose from the surface of the armor, and the passage was immediately in chaos. The venom also shot onto Ding Meng's body. Although Ding Meng had the protection of the cave virus, he still felt uncomfortable. The black venom felt like glue. When it hit his body, it immediately tightened his skin. Even he felt a faint pain. It was enough to show how powerful this venom was. The black venom was still spewing out. Many people had already reacted by quickly activating the energy shields on their armor. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 20 large and small bubbles of various colors covered the armor. The energy shields immediately stopped the venom from spewing out. Ding! Ding Meng discovered that the Divine Light wrist guards had also been activated. A light-colored coating spread across the surface of the wrist guards all over his body. It was clearly meant to protect Ding Meng's main body. It seemed that this poison was no small matter. Sure enough, although the venom was blocked physically, when it hit the energy shields, it immediately turned into wisps of black smoke. The black smoke seeped through the energy shields and continued to corrode the armor of the soldiers. This time, the formation was really messed up. Without the protection of the armor, it was no doubt equivalent to losing more than half of their strength. Ding Meng also felt a sense of uneasiness towards the unknown. It was not that he had never seen the monsters that plunder the world, but this time he really had never seen the demon before. What he had never seen before meant that he could clearly see the walls melting, the venom spewing out, and the demon's strange laughter. However, even his telekinesis vision could not capture the location of the demon's body. It seemed to be everywhere, as if it had merged with the fortress. This was probably not a demon of the Great Elder level. It was probably a terrifying existence like the sect leader or queen. What if this was some kind of secret technique that plundered the world? I'm leaving. The Starry Rainbow group can play with it slowly. Ding-Ming decisively turned around and ran wildly. According to the information transmission method, Ding-Ming actively activated the Divine Light bracers and combat boots. The two pieces of equipment immediately turned into white light mirrors, which were the standard Qilin arms and Qilin legs. A bright white line quickly appeared between the two light pupils. Ding-Ming, who was running, shook his body. The white line was thrown out and fixed in the air far away. Ding-Ming's body shook again, and the second white line was thrown out. After 4 consecutive times, 4 white lines formed a rectangle in the air. The divine light energy was instantly activated, and a new teleportation gate opened. Ding-Ming leaped and flew in. This was Mao Xing's martial technique, Divine Light Gale Steps, which could be used outside the warehouse. In the human world, the instant step martial technique could teleport a person a certain distance. However, Mao Xing's instant step could teleport a person from one space to another for a short distance. It was the real miniature wormhole technology. Seeing Ding-Ming escape with such a divine technique, Zhong Huazheng and Eisendale could only stare at him. They could not chase after him at all. However, Eisendale had already guessed that Ding-Ming was not escaping. It was very likely that he had returned to the area of the super crystal. Now, the situation was really dire. Not only were there so many battle saints and battle lords, but the abnormal monsters from the devouring world had also infiltrated. The situation was even more complicated. Eisendale made up her mind. She decisively activated the Shadow Turbulence system on her armor. With the Dark Queen as the center, golden rays kept appearing and gradually formed a cylindrical force field. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this was also a teleportation array. Eisendale was not a fool. Even someone as strong as Ding-Ming had to run. She could not just sit there and wait for death. Even the Dark Queen's armor was being damaged at a speed visible to the naked eye. The armor would turn into ashes in at most 2 minutes. If she did not run now, when would she run? The Shadow Turbulence was actually the prototype of the Shadow transmission technology. Everyone knew that the Shadow transmission could only be used by large mechanical units. Furthermore, it was a directional transmission, which meant that it could only be activated with specific coordinates. However, the armor was not a unit like a spaceship, so it could only be used with difficulty. Since there were no directional coordinates, the Shadow Turbulence would randomly teleport people away. This was very risky. It would be fine if they were teleported to a safe area, but if they were randomly teleported to an enemy's camp, then they would die even faster. Of course, only her armor, which she had spent a lot of money on, had this function. Others did not have the money to learn it, even if they wanted to. However, if she did this, how can anyone not notice it? Eisendale was still waiting for the force field to take shape. Suddenly, someone bumped into her from the side and knocked her, but to the ground. She looked up and saw that it was the old fox Zhong Huazheng. She was so angry that she cursed, "Go away." She also used all her strength to kick with both feet. Zhong Zhenghua was strong and could not be kicked away by her feet. Plop, plop. Both of them fell to the ground with 2 muffled sounds. When the others saw that there was a teleportation array, they all rushed over and tried to squeeze in. For a moment, the tunnel was in chaos. Chapter 686. Swoosh. The square door of the Divine Light teleportation array appeared again. Ding-Ming rolled out like a leopard. Eisendale was right. Ding-Ming returned to the area of the super crystal when he saw that the situation was not good. Ding-Ming was teleported to the bridgehead of the bridge at 10:30. He thought it was absolutely safe, But when he got up, he found three strangers in the middle of the bridge. They were three men in black suits, all wearing large black sunglasses on their faces. The three of them were exactly the same in terms of height, appearance, and clothing. Who were these three people? How did they get in? When did they come in? Perhaps these questions were not the most important. The key was that there were a few strange metal machines in the middle of the bridge. They were like three funnels inserted into the bridge, as if they were injecting something into the bridge. Ding Meng decisively opened his telekinesis vision. He was surprised to see that the broken bridge was actually growing forward. New metal kept growing out of the cracks and slowly extended toward the supercrystal. No wonder the general said that no one could walk to 3,000 meters on the bridge. It turned out that the bridge extended in this way. What kind of bridge was this? What were the three machines for? There were too many questions in Ding Meng's mind at this moment, but he still composed himself and said, "The people of the Starry Rainbow Corporation are fighting fiercely with the monsters of the devouring world outside, and you took advantage of this opportunity to come in." The three of them were shocked. They did not expect the short man in front of them to be able to tell. The two men in suits were about to step forward, but they were unexpectedly stopped by the man in the suit. "He is not from the Starbow Corporation." The man next to him immediately said, "Oh." The man in the lead seemed very confident. "The Starbow Corporation cannot be faster than us." The two men nodded, convinced. The man in the lead said, "Friend, may I ask where you are from?" Hearing his question, Ding Meng knew in his heart that this was definitely an outer space force. However, an outer space force that could break in here could not be underestimated. Ding Meng said in a low voice, "Who are you?" The man in the lead said, "Friend, if you came here by accident, please go back. This place isn't safe." Ding Meng suddenly laughed. "You also know that this place is not safe, but how could you enter this place by mistake?" The man in the lead did not answer, but the corners of his mouth twitched. The two men beside him suddenly flew up and struck Ding Meng with their palms from both sides. This was a classic case of silencing him. It might have been possible for them to silence others, but it was impossible for them to do the same to Ding Meng. As soon as the two of them leaped into the air, Ding Meng immediately identified them as intermediate thermodynamic warriors. Pa! Pa! The two palms accurately hit Ding Meng's right chest and left shoulder. Ding Meng neither blocked nor moved. The two men's expressions changed instantly. Their palms were like pieces of paper floating on Ding Meng's body, completely ineffective. "What are these three instruments?" Ding Meng asked calmly. The two men gritted their teeth and struck out with their palms again. This time, they probably used all of their source power. Their arms turned red, like burning steel. The steel arms swept across Ding Meng's head, but Ding Meng still did not move. When the steel arms hit his temples, he took 2 steps forward and faced the man in the suit in the middle of the bridge. "Answer me, what are these instruments?" The man in the suit's expression changed. His fear could be seen through his sunglasses because the steel arms of the two bodyguards melted like molten steel when they swept across Ding Meng's head. This was because the diamond star melting art had directly melted their arms. The two men did not even have time to scream before they fell to the ground and fainted. The man in the suit reacted quickly. He turned around and slapped a button on the central instrument. Then, Ding Meng grabbed him by the throat and lifted him up. "Tell me, what is this thing?" Ding Meng was a little angry. The man in the suit struggled desperately. "It's useless to kill me. You'll die soon, too." Ding Meng was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He casually threw the man in the suit away. The man's scream immediately resounded throughout the place. He fell directly into the abyss below. If an ordinary statistician was thrown down like this, even a god would not be able to save him. Ding Meng lowered his head and observed the 3 strange instruments. Unfortunately, he could not tell what they were. He simply spread his hands, and a large yellow torrent shot out from his palms. The source power flames directly burned the 3 instruments to ashes. However, this did not solve the problem fundamentally because the broken bridge was still growing. It was not fast and could even be said to be very slow, but it would not take long before it could connect to the supercrystal. Not good. Ding Meng realized that the singularity guards on the bridge had also moved away. The bridge could no longer create a defensive barrier like it had before. In other words, the origin ability users who stepped into the warehouse area would no longer be blocked by the Pearl Dream. Suddenly, there was a strong fluctuation in the air. Ding Meng decisively turned around and saw a large cloud of black fog appear at the end of the bridge. This aura was very familiar. After the black fog spread for a while, a middle-aged man in a black trench coat walked out. This man had an imposing appearance, and the aura on his body was extremely dense. He looked around, and only then noticed Ding Meng. "I've seen you before," the man spoke first. Ding Meng was a little surprised. "Oh," the man said, "your name is Ding Meng. You're an expert. No wonder little Tion and the other two were crying for help. They are indeed no match for you." Ding Meng's face sank. "Unfortunately, I don't know you." The man revealed a sinister smile. "It doesn't matter if you know me or not. You won't live for long anyway." Ding Meng also smiled. "Even if I'm going to die at your hands, shouldn't you at least let me know your name?" The man smiled. "Normal people don't deserve to know my name, but you're an exception. You were able to escape from Rainforest Planet back then, which is enough to prove that you're not bad. You can call me Meng Fan." "Rainforest Planet?" Ding Meng seemed to understand. "So you're from a Norse Empire apocalypse group?" Meng Fan smiled again. He did not deny it, but he did not admit it either. "No," Ding Meng suddenly realized. "You're from the Black Handprint group." Meng Fan revealed a look of surprise. "You're so young, but you know about us." Ding Meng said seriously. "You're from the Fifth Lord." Meng Fan's face sank as well. "You know too much." Ding Meng smiled bitterly to himself. He had learned this information from Julie and the Grassroots Empire. Meng Fan's expression became cheerful again. "Since you know about the Fifth Lord, then you should know that the Fifth Lord appreciates talents the most. If you join us, you'll be entrusted with important tasks." Ding Meng said, "If you want me to join you, you should at least let me know what this bridge is all about, right?" Meng Fan smiled again. "It seems that you're just like that Xingia, sly and cunning. You want to get information from me?" Ding Meng sighed and said, "This is called no risk, no gain. You want me to join you, but you want me to join you with just your mouth?" Meng Fan smiled even more happily. "When you beg for mercy later, you'll know that I only need to move my mouth." While he was speaking, Ding Meng secretly circulated his origin energy. This Meng Fan in front of him was definitely not a weakling. He must have astonishing skills. Sure enough, an extremely powerful wave of energy surged across the bridge, sweeping across it like a steel plate. Meng Fan had not even made a move, but his aura was already astonishing enough. This wave of energy was a mixture of the thermodynamic and hard systems. Ding Meng found himself sliding backwards uncontrollably. He estimated that this Meng Fan was at least a high-level battle saint. It seemed that he had underestimated him. Ding Meng quickly circulated the first 5 origin points. This was just a normal circulation, and he did not activate the diamond-shaped origin points. He slid to the edge of the broken bridge and barely steadied himself. When he raised his head again, Meng Fan had already silently appeared in front of him. He raised his leg and kicked fiercely at him. Ding Meng did not take the attack head-on. He decisively stepped to the side. Meng Fan seemed to have used too much force and rushed off the broken bridge. Unexpectedly, Meng Fan did not fall off the bridge. Instead, his figure gradually dimmed in the air. Ding Meng quickly retreated, and Meng Fan's fist descended from the sky. Boom! This fist actually created a small crater in the bridge. From the crater, a bolt of black origin energy, similar to an electric current, rushed in the direction Ding Meng had retreated. This time, he was unable to dodge. Ding Meng slammed both of his palms on the ground. His sacred young tiger palm had already reached the realm of returning to its original state. As his palms slammed down, the black energy exploded with a bang, transforming into countless golden spikes. Shwa, 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 shwa. This was like a rain of arrows cutting across the entire bridge. Meng Fan had already expected Ding Meng to block him. In reality, He had released the hard system's origin energy after being blasted apart. Although it sounded simple, it was impossible to accomplish without a profound understanding of martial arts. Pu. Ding Meng's entire body was pierced by countless arrows. Every small arrow of origin energy exploded after hitting its target. Countless golden eyes appeared on the bridge one after another. This scene was like a bulldozer pushing Ding Meng away. Meng Fan stood proudly in the middle of the bridge. He did not chase after Ding Meng. Instead, he adjusted his tie and hairstyle. Very few people had been able to survive this move of his, so he had a firm grasp of his temperament. As expected, Ding Meng was sent flying back to the bridge by the continuous explosions. He lay on the ground, motionless. Meng Fan stroked his unconventional hairstyle and revealed a smile. Do you believe me now? Sometimes, using your mouth is better than using your hands. You really do have some skills. Ding Meng replied in a muffled voice as he lay on the ground. Meng Fan turned his head in surprise. His tone was somewhat incredulous. You can actually stand up after receiving 2 of my punches? Ding Meng had already stood up. He patted the dust off his body. Your punches aren't that powerful. They look good, but they don't have much strength. They're flashy, but not practical. Meng Fan's eyes flashed with a cold light. I didn't expect you to be a high-level battle saint. His tone immediately changed. What a pity. Dying for nothing at such a young age. It's not worth it. Before he finished speaking, he once again slid over in a straight line. His speed was much faster than before. It was obvious that he had used his true strength. Chapter 687. At the same time that Meng Fan rushed forward, Ding Meng also jumped up. This time, he did not use his hand blade technique. Instead, he used his leg to kick. This was his usual strategy, to fight head-on. Bang! The 2 of them exchanged blows, but this time, it was Meng Fan who was at a disadvantage. He was sent flying by Ding Meng's kick. Halfway through his flight, Ding Meng's figure suddenly appeared on his right flank. His hand blade fell like lightning. Crack! The hand blade struck Meng Fan's cheek. His upper jaw and lower jaw were immediately dislocated. He rolled far away on the bridge like a dead dog. Ding Meng did not chase after him. He looked at his opponent with a strange expression. Meng Fan was actually fine after suffering such a heavy blow. He slowly stood up and used his hands to pinch his upper and lower jaw. With a crack sound, his jaw returned to normal. He shook his head again to make sure that he was fine. Kid, you're not bad. You successfully angered me. Meng Fan sneered. He raised his hand and suddenly made a hugging gesture. A strong light appeared on the bridge, and a pair of golden steel claws appeared out of thin air. The claws were at least 30 meters long, and they were shining with white stars. The claws were in a left and right position, and the claws were about to clamp down. Ding Meng could be considered to have seen many consummate techniques that allowed one to release origin energy. However, among the experts he had seen, Meng Fan was definitely the first to be able to release origin energy to such an extent. Judging from the aura of the pair of source energy claws, Ding Meng Fan could tell that they were at least 100,000 degrees Celsius. This was enough to show that Meng Fan's mastery of heat was very high. Secondly, the shining white stars on the claws faintly emitted the aura of the wall of holy splendor. This showed that the claws definitely had a body-hardening technique. Furthermore, the direction of the attack seemed to be grabbing but not grabbing, clamping but not clamping. It was very difficult to determine the origin of the attack. Ding Meng tiptoed and retreated lightly. This was the most stable method. Meng Fan miraculously appeared behind Ding Meng. Ding Meng didn't even have to turn around to feel an oppressive chill coming from behind. As Ding Meng retreated, he suddenly fell forward and slid over Meng Fan's crotch. This way of dodging was unexpected, but even so, when Ding Meng stood up, his telekinesis vision found that his back was badly mutilated. There were actually 2 rows of slanted claw marks on his back. There were a total of 6 bloody marks, which were clearly caused by a sharp weapon. Raising his head again, he saw a pair of steel claws on the back of Meng Fan's hand. It turned out that the real weapon was hidden in his sleeves. Ding Meng was also surprised. His body had been tempered thousands of times. He did not expect that his opponent's weapon could hurt him. This time, he could not afford to be careless. Ding Meng stretched out his right hand and opened his palm. The catoptric deflection on his waist made a series of kacha-kacha sounds before transforming into a diamond-shaped greatsword in his hand. Meng Fan laughed again. This is getting more and more interesting. It's been a long time since I've met such a satisfying opponent. After saying that, he once again flashed towards Ding Meng. At their level of speed, almost all of them had pseudo-light speed. They were so fast that it was impossible for the eyes to keep up with them. Of course, it was different in their own vision. In Meng Fan's eyes, Ding Meng did not even move. He just stood there quietly with the greatsword in his hand. He could not help but secretly rejoice. He had already activated his origin energy and used his diamond system confinement martial technique. As long as they were within 20 meters of each other, he would be able to form a force field and completely nail Ding Meng to death. If Ding Meng did not dodge, he would undoubtedly die. 100 meters, 80 meters, 60 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters. The golden polygonal force field had already formed. Ding Meng looked as if he had been frozen in a layer of ice. Meng Fan was ecstatic. He raised his claw and stretched it out. It was still the same principle. In a fight between these two, whoever moved first would be at a great disadvantage. This was because they were both using the opposite strategy. Just as he raised his steel claw, Meng Fan suddenly discovered that Ding Meng's aura had surged like a flood. His entire body seemed to have been ignited by white flames. It was obvious that he had been waiting for Meng Fan to get close enough to launch a sudden attack. Not good. Meng Fan subconsciously crossed his claws in front of his chest to protect himself. On the bridge, originally, Meng Fan was diving down while Ding Meng was standing still. However, in the next second, the scene changed to Meng Fan standing still while Ding Meng was rushing through his body. In that instant, a dark blue sword gleam seemed to have lit up the entire void. However, it only flashed for a short moment before it disappeared. Ding Meng held his sword with both hands and remained motionless in a horizontal slash. 3 seconds later, half of Meng Fan's body fell to the ground while the other half was still standing. This was because he had been cut in half by Ding Meng's sword. The speed, accuracy, and viciousness of this slash were indescribable. Meng Fan's so-called force field, techniques, and realm were all useless in the face of absolute strength. However, the corpse did not bleed. Instead, a large amount of black smoke spewed out of the wound. The black smoke gathered in the air and spread out for a while. After a long time, Meng Fan returned to normal. He laughed loudly and walked out of the black smoke. Ha ha! You didn't expect me to come back to life, did you? Ding Meng was not surprised by this at all. He had already sensed that Meng Fan's aura was abnormal when the other party teleported onto the bridge. You're one of the demons. Ding Meng appeared very calm. Meng Fan was a little surprised. Wow, you really know a lot. Ding Meng stared at his black windbreaker. This is a demon's cloak. Otherwise, you would have died just now. Meng Fan laughed crazily again. Ha 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 ha, do you know fear now? I've already said that you won't live for long. I admit that your strength is outstanding, but in front of absolute strength, you will never be able to kill me. Ding Meng's face was calm, and he did not speak. His Qilin arm slowly lit up. The divine light bracer on his hand was activated with a shio sound. A bright white pupil slowly formed. With a schwa sound, it turned into a light thorn. This was the divine light dagger. Meng Fan's laughter suddenly stopped. His gaze became frightened. At this moment, he could not help but cry out in alarm. Martial artist Mao Xing? Ding Meng said indifferently. It's good that you know. Meng Fan cried out again. You're actually a war god-level martial artist, Mao Xing. In his perception and vision, Ding Meng's entire body had been lit up by 5-colored origin energy flames. The pressure from his aura caused his breathing to become sluggish. This was a sign that his origin energy index had broken through the 10 billion mark. 10 billion, 10 billion. He never thought that someone would actually break through this barrier. Of course, this was also his misconception. Ding Meng's first 3 origin points were operating at the limit of their diamond form. His origin energy index had broken through to 10. 58 billion points. From the perspective of the index, he was indeed at the war god level. However, from the perspective of the martial technique's secret tome, he was actually at the same level as a war sage. If there was a difference, it would be that this origin energy index was a terrifying existence. Meng Fan gritted his teeth. He flipped his hand over his cloak, and the demon's cloak spun towards his opponent like a steel plate. Then, with a pung sound, his entire body split apart, turning into a black dragon that followed closely behind. He was quite smart. He knew that the war god-level martial artist Mao Xing was not an ordinary person. In addition, his opponent's strength was tyrannical. How could ordinary martial techniques deal with him? As such, he immediately used his ultimate move, the demon's cloak and the black dragon wave. It didn't matter if his opponent was a war god-level martial artist Mao Xing. There was only one result: die. Ding Meng had suffered greatly at the hands of this demon's cloak back when he had been at the towering sky peak. However, he had now leaped by leaps and bounds. How could he fall in the same place twice? Ding Meng struck out with his palm, and a giant screen of light immediately appeared in the middle of the bridge. Of course, this was not a screen of light created by the photon computer. Instead, it was a screen of holy light created by the wings of light. It was like a waterfall that flowed 3,000 feet down, pouring down countless streams of pure white light. When the demon's cloak collided with the screen, it was like mud falling into a large lake, instantly disappearing into nothingness. When the roaring demon dragon swam over, the divine light boots on Ding Meng's feet were also activated. The divine light dagger was infused with energy by the divine light boots and instantly turned into a gigantic holy sword. The size of the sword was almost the same as the bridge. Holy light radiated in all directions, and the entire void was as bright as day. The tip of the holy sword struck the demon dragon's head. In the face of such a terrifying power, the demon dragon could not move even an inch. Its majestic roar immediately turned into an incomparably mournful wail. The demon dragon's body was gradually purified by the energy of the divine light. With a plop, Meng Fan's real body fell onto the bridge. However, the holy screen created by the wings of light did not disappear. Ding Meng and his sword turned into a stream of light that looked like the Milky Way and passed through the holy screen. Meng Fan once again let out an extremely horrified scream. A moment later, the bridge returned to silence. In a short moment, all the divine light forms and the energy of the demons disappeared one after another. Meng Fan lay powerlessly on the ground. Ding Meng's feet were already standing in front of him. Meng Fan raised his head in horror. "You? What did you do to me?" Ding Meng said indifferently, "You are a human, but you are willing to be the demon's lackey. I have already purified the energy of the demons in your body." Meng Fan sneered disdainfully. "Are you stronger than me? You are also a human, and you are also a lackey of the gods." Ding Meng did not want to argue with him. "How did you black handprints know about this place?" Meng Fan smiled. "You want to know? Kneel down and beg me." As soon as he finished speaking, he wailed like a pig being slaughtered. A ruthless person like Ding Meng would not waste time talking nonsense with him. He directly cut off Meng Fan's left arm with his sword. After Meng Fan's energy of the demons was purified by the divine light, his aura had dropped to the level of a warlord. A warlord might still be a big deal in the eyes of others, but in front of Ding Meng, he was not even qualified to pose a threat. Meng Fan laughed miserably. "How sad. You don't even understand the whole situation. This is the first time I've been threatened by someone like you." "Ah," he suddenly howled in pain again. Ding Meng directly cut off his right leg. "Let's see how long you can last." Meng Fan finally showed an extremely angry expression. He could already tell that this kid was not a kind person. He would kill and slaughter as he pleased. There was no room for negotiation at all. With a crack, Meng Fan suddenly gritted his teeth. Take your time to think about it. I'm on my way. Chapter 688. The moment he crushed his teeth, Ding Ming felt that something was wrong. By the time he rushed over, it was already too late. Meng Fan's entire body had undergone a terrifying change. His skin was changing, fading, and withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if an adult had suddenly turned into an old man and then died of old age. 5 seconds. In just 5 seconds, Meng Fan had withered into a pile of skeletons. A gentle breeze blew past, and the skeletons immediately turned into dust. An extremely unpleasant stench filled the air. Ding Ming decisively took a few steps back. He could already smell that it was highly toxic. Even he could feel the skin on his arm tightening and hurting. This Meng Fan's teeth contained highly toxic poison. It seemed that he had been prepared. Once he was in a desperate situation, he would rather commit suicide than fall into the enemy's hands. What kind of secret organization was this black handprint? Even a battle general like this had such awareness. And he was also involved with the MO. Ding Ming opened his palm and tried to absorb the origin energy stars in the air. Unfortunately, Meng Fan had died without leaving a trace of origin energy. It seemed that the highly toxic poison had also eroded his origin energy. He turned around again and saw that the metal bridge was still growing. This time, Ding Ming didn't think too much. He flashed his divine light and stabbed it into the bridge. The divine light in his body continuously poured into the bridge, slowly purifying the energy of the demons. He couldn't let the demons' things spread to the supercrystal. A moment later, he turned around again. At this moment, the mountain wall at the end of the bridge exploded with a bang. A group of people filed in, led by Zhong Huazhen. However, the Starry Rainbow group's armor was all gone. It was probably corroded by the monster in the main passage. Only 3 people were left in the team of more than 20. He didn't know if they had died or returned. In any case, he couldn't sense their auras. He also didn't know where Liang, Yi, and Eisendale were. As soon as they saw the supercrystal, Zhong Huazhen and the other two's eyes widened. After working so hard for so many years, I finally see the true face of the mountain. Zhong Huazhen's breathing was a little rapid. At this moment, all of his attention was focused on the supercrystal. He completely ignored Ding Ming's existence. He slowly walked onto the bridge. His expression was as if he had just seen a beautiful woman take off her clothes. Ding Ming had already retracted his light thorns. He said calmly, "So what if I did?" Only then did Zhong Huazhen realize that Ding Ming was blocking his way. He frowned and said, "I won't argue with you about what happened before. You can leave now. I won't make things difficult for you." "Make things difficult for me?" Ding Ming could not help but laugh. "Do you think you have the right to make things difficult for me?" Zhong Huazhen glared at him and said, "This is the property of my Star Rainbow group. How dare you interfere?" Ding Ming was too lazy to argue. "Let me ask you, how did the monsters from the Devouring Realm come in?" Zhong Huazhen sneered. "We've already killed the trash from the Devouring Realm. Do you think you're stronger than that monster?" Ding Ming sighed. "If I'm not wrong, you were able to blast open the passage not because you really killed it, but because it needed you to open the passage. Your arrogance led the Devouring Realm's power to this place." Zhong Huazhen said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Ding Ming sighed. "You'd better pray for yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhong Huazhen's expression changed. The evil and strange aura from before appeared again. When he turned his head to look, he saw that the walls of the abyss were emitting green mucus. As expected, the Devouring Realm's monster had infiltrated here. "What's going on? Wasn't it already killed?" Zhong Huazhen was shocked. Hee. The creepy laughter resounded throughout the abyss. "Stupid and ignorant guy. If you didn't lead the way, I don't think I would have been able to find this place for the rest of my life." Zhong Huazhen was enraged. "You bastard. How did you find us?" The monster laughed. "Do you want to know why? I'll let you die with an understanding. I've known about your plan for many years. I've been living in your people for a long time. Once you entered the core, I could naturally follow you in. The Devouring Realms monster was able to live in the bodies of battle lords and battle saints without being detected. This monster was at least at the sect master level. That was an existence that instilled fear in countless origin ability users. Zhong Huazheng suddenly felt a chill. He had always thought that this monster was at the Great Elder level. Who would have thought that he was so wrong? If this treasure was obtained by the Devouring Realms monster, it would be an immeasurable disaster. The monster seemed to know what he was thinking. It laughed strangely again. Ha ha ha. This so-called New World energy that you think of is useful to me. With it, I can create an army of billions and cultivate brand new void spirit skates. The feast of 100 years ago can be held again. This time, even Ding Meng was shocked. He had seen the void spirit skates in the Devouring Realm. The reason why the Devouring Realm could not expand was because there were too few void spirit skates, and they could not be transported on a large scale. However, if the void spirit skates could be mass-produced like the Federation's fleet, the Devouring Realms army would be able to cross the Zyrtl star field, and the Holy Grail Federation would be doomed. Ding Meng was not some savior, nor did he care about the Federation's fate. However, this monster was right in front of him. It was indeed a rare and powerful enemy. He had to protect the super crystal no matter what. Zhong Huazheng looked at the walls of the abyss that were constantly melting. He suddenly realized something. You're fusing with this place? Ha ha ha. The monster laughed proudly. Kid, you have good eyes. Now you know what I'm capable of. Did you really think you could kill me in the passage just now? Ha ha ha, stupid. You're all in my stomach now. All of you have to die. As soon as it finished speaking, it started drizzling in the abyss. However, upon closer inspection, these cat-like raindrops were actually black venom. It was unknown if it was the venom that had corroded the armor earlier. Clang, clang, clang. Zhong Huazheng and the other two activated a golden source energy shield. With the shield's protection, they could naturally avoid coming into contact with the venom. People at the Battle Sage level were naturally not afraid of the venom. However, if they had to use their energy to resist it, it would undoubtedly consume a lot of energy. The shield could only slow down their energy consumption. Ding Meng also finally activated the fourth diamond-shaped origin point. The blood in his body flowed faster. At least the feeling of tightness when his skin came into contact with the venom was gone. He did not believe that the Devouring Realms venom was stronger than the cave virus in his body. Although he was fine, Zhong Huazheng and the other two were in trouble. From the four walls of the abyss, a series of monsters flew out and pounced toward Zhong Huazheng and the other two. Let's have some fun with my disciples and grand disciples. The monster laughed sinisterly. These monsters that flew out were actually mutated mosquitoes the size of a human. Their bodies were a mixture of red, yellow, and blue. However, the thorns on their faces were golden and longer than a human's arm. They looked terrifying. Ding Meng's expression changed. Ghost mosquitoes. What's that? Although Zhong Huazheng was strong, he had no experience dealing with Devouring Realm monsters. During the Devouring Realm War 100 years ago, he was still in outer space and had not returned to the Federation. He had no idea how terrifying these things were. However, Ding Meng knew that the ghost mosquitoes were not ordinary mutated monsters. They were cultivated in the high-level venom of the strange shadow tree. They were the divine weapons in the hands of those old monsters. Sure enough, as soon as the dozens of ghost mosquitoes flew out, they shot tricolored poisonous arrows at Zhong Huazheng and the other two from afar. This scene was a bit like soldiers with photoelectric guns surrounding and suppressing them. The shields of Zhong Huazheng and the other two were smoking and shaking violently. They could even shake the shields of battle saints and battle lords. Zhong Huazheng was secretly shocked. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kill them." The two subordinates in front were ice element people. One of them raised his hand and shot countless ice spears into the sky. The other directly formed a layer of ice with the power of dark ice to freeze the mosquitoes in the sky. Zhong Huazheng, on the other hand, pushed out a fiery red stream with a diameter of over 30 meters with both palms, directly barbecuing the mosquito swarm in the sky with both ice and fire. These mosquitoes clearly could not withstand such a powerful bombardment, hissing as they turned into wisps of black smoke. Umph, insignificant skill. Zhong Huazheng sneered disdainfully. Ding Meng sighed and said, "It's too early for you to be happy." Zhong Huazheng really wanted to ask why. However, at this moment, the monster's voice rang out again. "You're this happy just because you're warming up with me?" Zhong Huazheng felt nervous again. He had already seen clearly that there were more than 30 ghost mosquitoes flying out from the four walls. However, now, there were countless ghost mosquitoes floating out from all directions of the abyss. They covered the sky like dark clouds. There were at least tens of thousands of them. The screeching of tens of thousands of ghost mosquitoes was so loud that everyone's ears were buzzing. This was really the sound of fire from hell. Zhong Huazheng's face instantly turned pale. He was not afraid. He was a mid-level battle saint. Facing such a large number of monsters, the enemy could easily exhaust him to death. This was the reason why the Devouring World and the Frogman Kingdom could not be underestimated. The shocking number of monsters was enough to wipe out everything. Zhong Huazheng turned his head and said, "Ding Meng, why don't we work together?" At this time, Ding Meng seemed to be indifferent. He spread out his hands and said, "Isn't this the property of your Starry Rainbow group? I don't dare to interfere. You should protect your group's property. You should be aware of this, right?" Hearing this, Zhong Huazheng almost vomited blood. This was a typical example of saying things that did not hurt one's back. Moreover, it was a sarcastic remark. However, he did not dare to get angry at Ding Meng. He could only grit his teeth and say, "If I die, you won't be able to escape either. Is that so?" Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. "Then let's wait and see. Don't take any chances anymore. Take care of yourself." Following Ding Meng's gaze to the sky, Zhong Huazheng's expression was almost distorted. These tens of thousands of ghost mosquitoes were not disorderly. They were flying in an orderly manner in the sky. Moreover, many of the ghost mosquitoes' bodies had merged together to form a phantom ghost mosquito that was as large as a building. He was sure that his eyes were not playing tricks on him. This was really a ghost mosquito. Those who had not seen this scene before would not be able to understand the horrifying fear. Chapter 689. Ha 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 ha. The ghost mosquito actually let out a monstrous laugh. "How is it? Do you feel fear now?" "Hey!" Zhong Huazheng spat disdainfully. "Trash monster, do you think you're strong just because you have more?" He had come to a conclusion too early. The bodies of the tens of thousands of ghost mosquitoes seemed to be merging with each other, and the whole body was shrinking. Suddenly, a silver-white light burst out, and a real ghost mosquito about 50 meters tall finally took shape. Even if Zhong Huazheng had never eaten pork, he had seen pigs run before. He also knew the characteristics of the Devouring Realms monsters. Many ordinary monsters didn't have much killing power individually, but when grouped together, their numbers would cause a qualitative change. They would evolve into high-tier monsters, becoming a true devil race. The Federation had always thought that the Devouring Realms monsters were very simple, but they didn't know that the devil race's intelligence was not inferior to that of humans. At this moment, the ghost mosquito had truly taken shape. With a flap of its wings, a gust of wind blew across the bridge. This wasn't an ordinary hurricane, but a gust of wind mixed with origin energy and poison. The wind had a strange, gloomy green color, and the silk-like flow of energy within could be seen with the naked eye. As the wind blew, Zhong Huazheng felt his breathing become sluggish. He didn't have time to warn his two subordinates. All of his origin energy was pushed to the limit, and the flaming sun golden shield took shape. It stood in the middle of the bridge like a pyramid, and the shield trembled nonstop. However, the ghost mosquito didn't stop after a single flap. It flapped its left and right wings fiercely. After flapping 7 or 8 times in a row, it flew high into the sky and flapped its wings. It felt as if the bridge was being flapped out of shape. This could no longer be described as a hurricane. It was completely a poisonous storm. Zhong Huazheng was barely able to hold on, but the two ice warriors were in a miserable state. The sky blue ice shield was still very sturdy at first, but slowly, cracks began to appear on it. The cracks instantly expanded into a spider web, and finally, with a crack, it shattered. As soon as the shield broke, the two of them began to scratch their bodies with all their might. It was obvious that they had been poisoned and felt itchy. As the poison deepened, a terrifying scene finally appeared. The two warriors were just like Meng Fan from before. Their skin began to fade, wither, and rot. One of them probably couldn't stand the pain and jumped off the bridge while howling. The other couldn't hold on for too long. After a few howls, he also jumped off the bridge. There was no need to look to know that these two were finished. Zhong Huazheng was strong, and his flaming sun golden shield did not shatter. However, this was not the way to go. The ghost mosquito kept flapping its wings, and all of his origin energy was used to maintain the shield. He had no energy left to attack. In the end, he was wasting energy for nothing. The monsters in the devouring world were divided into soldier, warrior, fierce warrior, commander, demon general, demon soul, elder, grand elder. Among them, the fierce warrior level was a watershed. After becoming a fierce warrior, they could control lower-level soldiers and warriors. The demonic spirit level was the second dividing line. Monsters at this level possessed magical powers and treasures, which were equivalent to the secret manuals and godly weapons of origin ability users. Starting from the demonic spirit level, the growth and change of every level brought about an extremely shocking increase in strength. They were not as straightforward as the increase in strength of origin ability users. For example, Shuiyu Mountain was at the elder level. He truly possessed the wisdom of the demon race. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to spend so many years with Feng Jianzhen and Waterdrop. All the way to the ancestor level, which was above the great elder level, was no longer something that a single human expert could deal with. They were not afraid of battle monarchs or battle saints. They had all kinds of methods, and it was not a simple competition of origin energy, but a collision of skills between different civilizations. Just like the current situation, Zhong Huazheng was still desperately resisting the astral wind. However, the thick thorns of the ghost mosquito suddenly shot out a dark blue demonic light. This light was almost no different from the railgun on the starship. This demonic light burned the scorching sun golden shield with a hissing sound. Not long after, Zhong Huazheng could no longer hold on. The shield was blasted open with a bang. The light beam hit his chest, and he was directly sent flying. In Ding Meng's vision, Zhong Huazheng's heart was hit by a cluster of black poison. Although this poison was not fatal, it was like the energy of the demons. It completely imprisoned the origin of his heart. If it could be described, it would be that the originally dazzling origin was wrapped in a cluster of filthy pus, unable to display its original function. With a bang, Zhong Huazheng fell heavily to the ground. At this moment, his aura had already fallen to the Battle Master level. Even though he had all kinds of martial arts secret manuals and the essence of ultimate skills, they all died in his womb before he could use them. However, he was very smart. He quickly got up, turned around, and ran. He directly jumped off the bridge. His goal was very simple. If he could not win, then he would run. He had to save his life first. The ghost mosquito in the sky laughed loudly. This place is now my territory. Do you think you can run away? Suddenly, a scream came from the abyss. This was clearly Zhong Huazheng's voice. Ding Meng sighed. He was too lazy to watch. If Zhong Huazheng had been more polite to him, he might have helped him. Unfortunately, this guy thought too highly of himself. He had a lot of origin energy, but he was brainless. Most importantly, he still wanted to kill him. Since you think you are so strong, then you can face the ghost mosquito's gale alone. From start to finish, the ghost mosquito did not attack Ding Meng. Ding Meng also remained motionless. At this moment, the ghost mosquito flapped his wings in the air as if he was carefully observing Ding Meng. You are not human. Oh, Ding Meng was a little surprised. The ghost mosquito said, You have the aura of my race on you, but you are human. Ding Meng secretly thought that this monster's eyes were sharp. He had once cultivated underground on planet Extreme Flame and absorbed the flame origin energy of the flame butterfly race. He had also interacted with the black butterfly demon empress. His body had indeed refined a lot of energy, so it was reasonable for him to have the aura of the demon race on him. The ghost mosquito spoke again. Since you did not attack me earlier, and you also have the aura of my race on you, I will spare you. Spare me. Ding Meng revealed a strange smile. The ghost mosquito's voice was a little impatient. What? It is your good fortune that I spared you. Look at how unwilling you are. Do you still want to stand in my way? Ding Meng pointed at the super crystal behind him. You call this the New World energy? The ghost mosquito said, Nonsense. If you don't leave, then kneel down and accept your death. Ding Meng sighed. If you had encountered anyone else, they might not have been able to do anything to you, no matter how strong they were. However, you encountered me, so you were in for a bad time. The ghost mosquito said angrily, How dare you speak to me like that? Ding Meng sighed. There is one thing you don't understand. Your methods are useless against me, because I am your nemesis. The ghost mosquito decisively flapped its wings, and the astral wind mixed with origin energy and poison swept over again. However, Ding Meng did not reveal his shield, nor did he retreat to avoid it. He knew that these moves were completely useless in front of this astral wind. Using them in vain would be futile. He had the K-virus to protect him, and his physical fitness was many times stronger than Zhong Huazheng and the others. He stood in place and enjoyed the breeze, perfectly fine. Huh? The ghost mosquito was clearly shocked. A puny human like you is actually immune to the devil hat's poison? Ding Meng knew about the devil hat's poison. Meng Yin had told him about it before. It was the upgraded version of Little Red Riding Hood's 5th generation. Only the high-tier demons of the Devouring World had it, and it was refined in the sacred lake of the Devouring World. But so what? No matter what kind of poison you used, the K-virus was the nemesis of all poisons. Ding Meng's confidence came from this. With a whoosh, the ghost mosquito's thorn spat out a beam of demonic light again. This time, he could not just stand there and let it hit him. Ding Meng decisively raised his left hand, and the divine light bracer was instantly activated, turning into a bright white shield in front of him. When the dark blue beam of demonic light hit the shield, it was like water flowing into a lake. Ding Meng could sense that the ghost mosquito's beam of demonic light was the toxic essence of the devouring world that had been refined many times, supplemented by origin energy and crystal energy. It was just that the scale was not large enough. If there was enough energy, it would be even more powerful than the main and secondary cannons of a starship. But it was still the same question. So what? Did the low-tier energy from the devouring world dare to challenge the high-tier divine light? This wasn't a matter of energy, but rather it was a matter of suppressing him in terms of quality. The ghost mosquito spat for a long time and finally realized that something was wrong. Not only was the demonic light unable to penetrate the other party's body, but it was also pouring energy into the other party. It decisively stopped spitting and asked in a harsh voice, What kind of monster are you? Are you a human? Are you a demon? Ding Meng smiled. Since you've been polite to me, I'll spare you. This was what the ghost mosquito had just said, and Ding Meng had returned it to him. The ghost mosquito was furious. What a joke. Do you really think that I can't do anything to you? It spread its wings and suddenly swooped down from the sky like a giant fighter. The two antennae on its front legs were like steel blades dozens of meters long. It was trying to cut Ding Meng in half. Whoosh! A cold light flashed on the bridge, and Ding Meng was indeed cut in half. But the problem was that Ding Meng's body was not cut in half. He was still smiling, and his figure was gradually fading. This was obviously a fake body. Crap! The ghost mosquito also realized that something was wrong. It turned its head again and found that Ding Meng had already flashed above its head. It wasn't that it hadn't seen these light speed type martial skills of the humans before, but the most taboo thing for humans was to engage in close combat with the devouring realm monsters. It really couldn't understand why Ding Ming had flashed over. "Kid, do you really want to die?" the ghost mosquito said angrily. Ding Ming smiled. "Your poison isn't much. Have a taste of mine." He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a pure white liquid. This was the blood that he spat out after using his origin energy. For the monsters that plundered the world, the K-virus was undoubtedly the king of poisons. "I can't do anything to you in the sky, but if you dare come down, I can spit all over your face." This mouthful of blood landed directly on its eyes. The giant ghost mosquito looked as if it had been burned by fire. It immediately jumped around madly and let out a shrill scream. This scream was no longer the scream of a living creature, but rather the strange sound of a demonic wind blowing through the valley. It echoed in the abyss and was particularly frightening. Chapter 690. The power of the K-virus lay in the fact that it could both detoxify and kill without leaving a trace. The detoxification was due to Ding Ming's control over quantity. Back when Shuyan and the others were poisoned, Ding Ming had only divided their blood according to their symptoms. Now that Ding Ming was so powerful, the power of the K-virus contained in the blood of origin created by the operation of the 4 diamond forms was estimated to be hundreds of thousands of times more powerful than before. It would be strange if the ghost mosquito could withstand this mouthful of blood. The ghost mosquito flapped its wings and soared into the sky again. It was like a fighter jet that had lost control and was flying wildly in the sky. However, black smoke kept coming out of its body. Ding Ming's blood was like sulfuric acid, corroding this strange bird bit by bit. Chi, the body of the ghost mosquito was constantly decomposing, melting, and shrinking. Finally, it turned into a large cloud of black smoke and dissipated in the wind. Ding Ming did not show any complacency. On the contrary, his expression became more serious. "Come out. If you continue to hide, the energy of this new world will be mine." The voice of the monster came from the walls of the abyss again. "Stupid and ignorant human, how dare you kill my disciples and grand disciples?" Ding Ming said, "Your disciples and grand disciples are not very good. I just said that I am the nemesis of these things." The monster seemed to be silent. After a while, it slowly said, "In the past 30 years, you are the first human to force me to reveal my immortal aperture. The last time was 53 years ago. The so-called immortal aperture was the term of the Devourer's world. The principle was roughly similar to the human spirit body. The spirit body could only survive by attaching itself to a human body or an artificial body. The monsters of the Devourer's world were ever-changing. High-level demons could attach themselves to almost any body, just like the current situation. The reason why Ding Ming's telekinetic vision could not capture the true body of this monster was because the monster had actually merged with the walls of the abyss, or rather, the military fortress. This was the classic fusion technique of the Devourer's world. Therefore, when the monster spoke, it gave people the illusion that its voice was above their heads, but it also seemed to be everywhere. In other words, Ding Ming was indeed in the stomach of this monster. The immortal aperture was the original form of the monster, which was also the monster's true body. High-level monsters were the same as humans. They were constantly cultivating and growing. Only when their immortal aperture was strong could they undergo a larger scale of devouring and evolution. At this moment, the walls of the abyss finally began to change. Countless sky blue air spurted out and gathered at the end of the bridge to form a blue pupil. The pupil rotated and twisted. In the blink of an eye, a strange human figure appeared on the bridge. This was the figure of a human woman. She didn't look old, and her figure was very slender. However, her clothes were made from various poisonous leaves of the devouring realm. Her style was more like the ancient costumes of the humans. She wore a black pearl crown on her head, and there were 6 wings of demonic feathers on her back. Her entire body floated above the bridge. Based on her figure alone, she didn't look very different from a human. However, her skin was a cold and oppressive blue. It was really blue from head to toe, which made her originally delicate face look sinister and terrifying. Looking from afar, it felt like she was a ghost that had floated out from the underworld, not a real human. For some reason, in Ding Meng's perception, there was clearly a trace of a human's aura left on this demoness. However, she was from the Devouring Realms demon clan. The strength of her aura once again refreshed Ding Meng's knowledge. This demonic woman's aura was mainly origin energy and supplemented by poison. There were also several types of energy that Ding Meng had never seen before. When combined together, it was like a mass of chaos. It was a typical demonic aura of the Devouring Realm. If converted to Origin Energy Index, this demonic woman was definitely on the level of a war god. Ding Meng immediately came to a conclusion. This monster was definitely a sect leader of the Devouring Realm. Sure enough, the demonic woman was the first to speak. Her voice seemed to have come from the depths of hell. My immortal aperture has appeared. Why don't you quickly kneel down and pay your respects? Pay respects? Ding Meng couldn't help but laugh. Do you really think of yourself as a deity? The demonic woman's eyes had no pupils. They were completely black. When she glared, she had a terrifying majesty. How dare you? You don't even recognize me. Ding Meng looked at her with interest. Could it be that you're very famous? The demonic woman said coldly, even the old brats of the Holy Grail Federation have to show me some respect when they see me. Since you're young and ignorant, listen up. I am the sect leader of the Devouring Realms' sevenfold mountain clan, the demonic concubine of the 9 netherworlds. Why don't you quickly kneel down and beg for mercy when you see me? Ding Meng laughed coldly. Sorry, I don't have a habit of kneeling. The demonic woman said angrily, How dare you? I'll show you what I'm capable of. After saying this, she gently raised her index finger. A faint blue dot of light appeared at the tip of her finger and began to spin rapidly. Ding Meng originally didn't think much of it. Only now did he realize that this demonic woman wasn't bragging. The energy of this dot of light was terrifying. Just like himself, it instantly erupted with an extremely powerful combat strength. After condensing for a moment, the devil concubine of the netherworld gently flicked her finger, and the speck of light immediately floated towards Ding Meng. The originally insignificant speck of light floated halfway, and with a boom, it transformed into an identical devil concubine of the netherworld. This damn thing wasn't even a mirror image. He really didn't know that the demonic race's power was so amazing. The fake body could even speak. Who dares to offend the sect leader? Quickly kneel down. The fake body also had wings. Like the ghost mosquito, it swooped straight down. However, its aura was incomparable to the ghost mosquito. Before it even arrived, the wind that it set off shook Ding Meng so much that he slid backwards. One had to know that at this moment, all 4 of Ding Meng's diamond origins were in operation. Even so, they couldn't withstand this wave of air. The current situation was very dangerous. Ding Meng realized that whether it was the demonic concubine of the 9 netherworlds or the fake body, the fluctuation of the poison was very weak. On the contrary, the demonic aura was stronger. This meant that the K-virus couldn't deal with this demonic woman. Seeing that the fake body was flying down, Ding Meng secretly activated the 5th origin in the form of a diamond. He suddenly leaped up and chopped at the air. He also intended to test the strength of this demonic woman. However, this time he was very wrong. The chop missed, and the fake body passed through his body. Moreover, Ding Meng suddenly felt weak all over. He used his telekinesis vision to scan the area. The diamond origin's luster had dimmed significantly. It was obvious that the fake body had stolen it. Damn, what kind of demonic martial arts is this? It can be played like this. Ding Meng was shocked. When he looked up again, the fake body was floating above the broken bridge. It raised its head and laughed strangely. Haha, ignorant fool. This is the consequence of offending the sect leader. Want to kneel down? Kneel my ass. Ding Meng didn't dare to be careless this time. He quickly activated the 9 origins and raised his divine light wristband. With a clang, the divine light dagger appeared. The demonic concubine of the 9 netherworlds at the end of the bridge was shocked. Divine energy! Swoosh! A pure white light spike suddenly shot up into the sky. This was the telekinesis vision controlling it to fly. The fake body seemed to know the power of divine light technology. It quickly spread its wings and flew higher, trying to avoid the sudden attack of the light spike. However, the light spike seemed to have grown a pair of eyes and was chasing after its butt. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The fake body flew very quickly and changed its trajectory rapidly in the air. There were a few times when the light spike was clearly about to hit it, but it managed to twist left and right to dodge with difficult maneuvers. After circling in the air once more, the fake body saw that the light spike was chasing after it like a homing missile. It simply spread its wings and flew towards Ding Meng on the bridge again. Its intention was very sinister. If you were controlling the light spike, you wouldn't have time to care about anything else. If you dodged, it would take the opportunity to steal your source energy again. If you didn't dodge, the light spike would hit you. Hence, the fake body didn't have to worry about anything else. Ding Meng didn't move at all. He just waited for it to come. Only when it came into contact with him did Ding Meng exert his strength. Clang! There was an urgent clang. A golden light illuminated the entire area. The Diamond Star Arts crown shield covered his body. This wasn't made with ordinary source energy, but with the essence of divine light. Ding Meng's train of thought was correct. I don't care how amazing your demonic powers are. Do you think divine light technology can't subdue you? Sure enough, the fake body failed to pass through Ding Meng's body this time. It was stuck in the protective shield of the crown and could not move at all. Then, the light spike pierced into the fake body's back. It was only half a meter away from Ding Meng's nose, but the light spike stopped steadily. Whoosh! A strange demonic sound came from inside the shield. The fake body slowly faded until it disappeared. However, the light spike absorbed the source energy, turned into a light pupil, and returned to Ding Meng's hand. Only then did Ding Meng feel the energy that had been stolen from him return to his body. The demonic concubine of the netherworld stared at Ding Meng. I didn't expect you to be not only a human, but also a demonic demon. What a freak. Ding Meng didn't waste any more words. He quickly stepped out from the middle of the bridge. His whole body swept up again, and the classic hand knife once again cut towards the demonic concubine of the netherworld. This time it wasn't a hand, but a divine light dagger. The shape of the dagger had changed. It was like an oversized machete. The blade was as long as 20 meters. No matter what kind of monster you were, you would die if you were hit by this blade. The demonic concubine of the netherworld slowly raised her palms. Her thumbs touched each other, and her index fingers connected. There was a heart-shaped gap between her palms. She suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a sky-blue energy from the gap. This was an energy flow that could destroy the heavens and the earth. After it gushed out of the gap, it immediately turned into a terrifying torrent of source energy. The torrent completely submerged the bridge. Its momentum was like a tsunami. It gave people the feeling that the sky-blue sea was angry, letting out a terrifying roar. At the same time, a strange whistle-like sound burst out of the demonic concubine of the netherworld's mouth. The sound was sharp and hurried. It was very ear-piercing, and it shook the entire abyss slightly. Ding Meng had been charging forward at first, but the sudden surge of astonishing energy forced him to circulate his 9 origin points to the limit. He activated his shields at top speed and switched from a chop to a palm strike. Similarly, a wave of 5-colored origin flames was pushed out. Chapter 691. The two enormous forces collided with each other on the bridge. They did not condense into an energy eye, nor did they cause an explosion. Instead, they melted when they came into contact with each other, like a roaring multicolored torrent crashing against an oncoming blue tide. The center of the bridge made a whooshing sound as waves of origin energy wind continuously shot out in all directions. This kind of shocking attack was a true competition of foundation. Both of them were conceited about their solid foundation, so their pushing and shoving showed no signs of stopping. In Ding Meng's vision, he could not see the outside world. He only felt that he was really at the bottom of the sea, and the torrent crashing against him was endless, wave after wave, each wave higher than the last. This demonic concubine of the netherworld was another super expert after experts like Guyu, Great Heaven Peak, and Isendale. Even he felt that he could not handle it. In fact, this was not the most powerful thing about her. It was the demonic sound that the demonic concubine of the netherworld emitted. It seemed to have a unique ability to affect one's mind. At first, his ears were buzzing, but then there was tinnitus. After listening to it for a long time, Ding Meng began to see illusions around him. They were all the faces of the demonic concubine of the netherworld. She would occasionally smile seductively, roar angrily, and grimace like a ghost. This was not a simple visual disturbance. Instead, it caused Ding Meng's mind to be in a trance, unable to concentrate. From this, it could be seen that this demonic art was of a higher level than the psychic power of the illusions. No wonder even the battle saints of the Federation were afraid of this world-devouring demon. It made sense. This could not go on. Ding Meng decisively spread out his psychic vision and built a psychic model of the green spirit divine tree in front of him. The divine tree was built with psychic strings. At the same time, Ding Meng poured a large amount of information into it and finally merged it with the origin flames. The 9 netherworld devil concubine was also in a difficult situation. The energy flow that Ding Meng pushed back was pure heat energy, with the god race energy in the middle, constantly purifying her demon race energy. This was why there was no explosion when the two of them clashed. Furthermore, the 9 netherworld devil concubine's origin flames were increasing exponentially. She was clearly suppressing him, but he was suddenly suppressing her by a large amount. As a world-devouring old monster, the demonic concubine of the netherworld knew that she could not stop at this time. If she could not hold on and let go, the other party's torrent would instantly smash her into pieces. This human kid was only in his 30s or 40s. How could he be so strong? Since when did the Holy Grail Federation have such a prodigy? If she continued to be in a trance, she would be blasted into a pulp. Don't you dare succeed. The demonic concubine of the netherworld, who had woken up, suddenly separated her palms and struck forward across the air. At the same time, she flew up, stretched her limbs, and raised her head to let out a clear cry. Ah, this was no longer a demonic sound. It was the limit of a high-level demonic art. This time, the blue flood did not come from her mouth. Instead, it came from her body. The 5-colored origin flame that originally had the upper hand was once again pushed back. It was as if a super railgun had directly swallowed the origin flame and drowned Ding Meng in an instant. Ding Meng was shocked. He did not have time to activate the 10th point. He simply gathered all his strength to support the crown shield. The bridge was deformed, and the crown shield was colorful. This was Ding Meng's current limit. Although the shield barely blocked the impact, with Ding Meng as the center, for new blue torrents appeared out of thin air in the abyss. They took the form of tornadoes and attacked together. Ding Meng had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure the attack. Unexpectedly, the 4 tornadoes were not attacking him. Instead, they gathered in front of him and guided the opponent's energy flow to strengthen. It was as if a shield had been erected in front of him. Then the blue torrent instantly expanded and turned into a giant blue phoenix. Oh no! Ding Meng immediately understood the opponent's intention. The demonic concubine of the netherworld's actions were no different from detonating a gunpowder warehouse. Swoosh! The blue phoenix crashed into the crown shield like a bolt of lightning. A crack appeared on the crown shield. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out. The energy flow finally exploded, turning into dense stars that formed a waterfall that swept across the bridge and rushed toward the super crystal in the middle. Ding Meng was blown away on the spot. He spat out a mouthful of bright white blood and flew backward. A pair of white wings of light immediately grew out of his back. This was the combination of the divine light war boots and the wings of light to reduce the impact as much as possible. Ding Meng also flew into the air and floated. He didn't care about the danger of being injured at this moment. He raised his hand and slapped out across the air. Because the demonic concubine of Netherworld was still screaming on the opposite side, the explosion had not stopped. Many stars hit the surface of the supercrystal. Even the giant crystal was faintly flashing. It was obvious that it had sensed the threat and sent out a signal. Ding Meng really did not expect this world-devouring demon to be so terrifying. However, his palm also activated the veil of holy light. He passed through the veil of holy light with his sword and turned into a streak of light that shot toward the bridge like a bolt of lightning. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. The demonic concubine of the Netherworld said proudly, "So, in terms of strength, this seat is still stronger than you." Ding Meng was speechless. It turned out that this woman thought that her face was more important than her strength. She wanted people to kneel down and beg for mercy at the slightest provocation. She could not beat him, but she insisted that she was stronger. When it came to face, she really had a tight grasp on it. It's because the Xinguang singularity is protecting that passage. The Devourer Realm's monsters can't enter the main passage of the fortress. The 9 Netherworld demonic concubine couldn't help but ask, "Then who can enter?" A cold look appeared in Ding Meng's eyes. Only the Starbao Corporation's warriors can enter unscathed. After entering, the Pearl Dreamscape will be removed. After this barrier is removed, the demons will be able to enter safely. The reason the demons are allowed to enter is because the demons can extend the bridge into the crystal. The 9 Netherworld demonic concubine was confused. "What are you trying to say?" Ding Meng sighed. "What I'm trying to say is that all of this has been arranged. There's a sequence. The Protoss came in first to remove the barrier, and the demons came in to create the bridge. Because the demons' nemesis is the Protoss, the demons had to be destroyed. Next, the Devourer Realm's monsters were allowed to enter. In other words, you shifters. The Protoss and shifters ended up in a stalemate, with both sides suffering heavy losses. In the end, the humans, the Oriole, came to pick up the scraps. Do you understand now?" The 9 Netherworld demonic concubine frowned. "But didn't I get rid of that group of humans?" In the end, Zhong Huazheng also fell down. Ding Meng suddenly laughed. "These are all small fries. The real big shots haven't shown up yet." The 9 Netherworld demonic concubine's tone turned cold. "Are you saying that we've all been used?" Ding Meng said, "I know there's no basis for my inference, but what if someone else comes here? Does that prove that I'm not talking nonsense?" The 9 Netherworld demonic concubine's expression suddenly changed. She had already sensed an extremely unusual aura moving in this direction. It seemed that Ding Meng had sensed it before her, so he said that. "Which scoundrel dares to use me to pave the way for him? This is unforgivable. I will kill him as soon as possible." She roared fiercely, but in fact, she turned into a cloud of blue mist and slowly dissipated. In Ding Meng's perception, the damned demoness had merged into the walls of the abyss again, as if she was everywhere. Ding Meng smiled bitterly. "Aren't you so powerful? Then why are you hiding?" This time, the 9 Netherworld demonic concubine did not even answer him. Of course, this was also in line with the characteristics of the old monsters of the devouring world. When there was something good, they would run faster than a rabbit, and when there was danger, they would disappear without a trace. At this moment, in the main passage, the dangerous aura was getting closer and closer. Ding Meng did not move. He also knew that this place was a dead end, and there was no way to escape. He could only wait for the person to come closer. About 10 minutes later, a figure slowly walked out of the crack at the end of the bridge. Chapter 693. Ding Ming said, "Looks like I was right. You were the one who arranged all of this." The armor shook its head. "I didn't arrange it. It was bound to happen sooner or later." Ding Ming did not understand what the armor was saying. He suddenly remembered that the Divine Light Singularity Guardian had explained that the first batch of powerful enemies had built this military fortress more than 20 years ago. He asked, "The Black Handprint came here 26 years ago?" The armor said, "That's right. The Fifth Lord also heard about the Mao Xing civilization scattered in our main star system many years ago. He had always coveted Xinguang technologies. When these fortifications were half-built, a mysterious warrior came here and wiped out all the elite forces in this place. The Black Handprint was greatly weakened because of this." Ding Ming was surprised. There was such a thing? The armor continued. To prevent the Black Handprint from reviving, another expert red guest sealed the Fifth Lord and his super warship. Ding Ming frowned. The Grassroots Empire? This time, it was the armor's turn to be surprised. "I didn't expect you to know about this mysterious person." Ding Ming smiled bitterly. The Fifth Lord and the Black Handprint were released by Xinjie. Strangely enough, Julie was also one of the Black Handprint's people. The first strong enemy he encountered at Black Gold Base was Julie. This meant that he had been involved in this matter from the very beginning. Now, I finally know why the Grassroots Empire wanted to bestow him. Ding Ming sighed deeply. Because the Grassroots Empire already knew that the Black Handprint was involved with the demons. Although she did not have any combat power, she could still punish the Black Handprint. The armor stared at him. "Looks like you know more than I do." Ding Ming said, "You must have known about the Mao Xing civilization at that time." The armor had a special feature when it spoke. Every time it spoke, it would be silent for a short while. It was probably thinking carefully before it spoke. "Although I knew about this place more than 20 years ago, I didn't know it was the ruins of the Mao Xing civilization. To be exact, it was after you opened the wormhole in space that I slowly learned about the Mao Xing civilization." Ding Ming said in surprise, "Does it have something to do with me?" The war armor nodded. "Indeed, this has a lot to do with you. Why did the spore life form appear under the Bramble Planet?" Ding Ming asked tentatively. "You know?" Warframe said, "That's not the main issue. My opinion is different from others. Chu Ming Liang from Haitian Group is considered a celebrity. He has lived for more than 200 years. Why would he suddenly appear in the underground world of Planet Thorn instead of staying in the Federation?" Ding Ming's face darkened. "So you investigated Haitian Group after the incident?" Warframe said, "It's not that difficult. You are indeed Lan Bing's secretary, but neither you nor Lan Bing are core members of the Shanghao Corporation. As such, I'm very relieved that the Xinguang Corporation's energy won't fall into the hands of the Shanghao Corporation." Ding Ming sighed again. "I only have one last question. This place is so secretive. Why did you build the Tsujing base with such great fanfare and transport some energy residue back to the Federation? Isn't this the same as deliberately exposing yourself?" Warframe said, "Forgive me for not being able to answer this question, and you may never know the answer. Of course, my intention is not to kill you." Ding Ming immediately raised his guard. "Then what do you want?" Warframe said, "I'm not like other people. When I get something good, I'm always willing to share it with my friends." Ding Ming laughed coldly. "I'm sorry, but I'm not your friend, and I don't want to have a friend like you." Warframe seemed to be laughing. "Don't worry. You'll soon be my friend, and you'll be glad to have a friend like me." Ding Ming said, "What do you want?" Warframe said, "It's very simple. I want you to open this energy crystal and get the real Xinguang energy inside. Then we can all share this energy. It's a win-win situation." Ding Ming sighed. "What if I tell you that even I can't open it?" Warframe said, "You're different. You're a Mao Xing warrior. You must know how to open it. Ding Ming said, I've been here for a long time. If I could really open it, I would have done it long ago. I wouldn't have waited until now. Warframe was silent for a long time before speaking again. It's fine. A Maoxing warrior must know how to open it. I have plenty of time. I can wait until you find a way. Ding Ming sighed. I don't understand. Why do you insist on taking something that doesn't belong to you? The war armor also seemed to sigh. I also know that sometimes some things can't be completely resolved through peaceful means at this point. The smell of gunpowder was already very strong. If they couldn't resolve it peacefully, they could only rely on force.